dear colleagues, this is 2 o'clock at least here in Budapest. So I would like to welcome all of you. Good morning, America. Good afternoon, Europe and Africa. Good evening in Asia and Australia. Again, welcome to all of you at the Global Election Day Summit for the first time, hopefully not for the last time. My name is Zsolt Szolnoki. I'm the Secretary General of the Association of European Election Officials. More well known, the acronym is the ACEEEO. And I just would like to first all of you to recall that in 2005, already 17 years ago, almost 17 years ago, next to the beautiful lake in Hungary or the Balaton, the ACEEEO conference and the Global Election Organization conference decided to coming up with this initiative of the Global Election Day. And the main goal of this day was at the time that we have to confirm our belief in the irreversibility of the democratic processes. We have to inform the public of new achievements and challenges related to various types of voting system, to draw the attention, parliaments, governments, politicians, and world leaders on the importance of their leadership role that they play in promoting a culture of democracy and high levels of voter participation. And last but not least, influencing first-time voters and young voters to commit themselves to democratic values. In the ACEEEO, we considered this Global Election Day at the same time also a celebration of the election officials, to celebrate the election officials all around the world, to acknowledge the work of the election officials who are definitely in the front line of the democratic processes. And I have to say that in the past 17 years, most of the ACEEEO election management bodies opened the doors on the margin of the Global Election Day. They invited the voters, especially to young voters, to different events. And of course, this kind of events was always promoted by the ACEEEO as well. And we put all the news on our website or our Facebook site as well. So in this year, not so far away, only the very beginning of January, we decided that we tried to make this Global Election Day truly global. Therefore, we invited, hopefully, we try to invite, of course, almost all of the election management bodies from all around the world for an event, as we called it, Global Election Day Summit, where the goal is that not just simply, but for the priority, our priority is that to celebrate the election as a cornerstone of democracy, to acknowledge the election officials, to demonstrate the unity of the election officials from all over the globe, to show at the same time to show our diversity of the election, and to support the exchange of best practices among the election management bodies, and of course try to provide a kind of guidance to the voters as well. So as I said, we try to invite all the election management bodies from all around the world. Of course, we never expected that we can get together all the almost 200 election management bodies from all around the world. I'm speaking about, of course, only about the central election management bodies. But we were absolutely happy to see that today we are expecting around 40 contributions from almost all the continent. And we are happy to see not only the well-known faces from the election community, but also to see new faces, new colleagues, and even new organization, a new association which are dealing with any part of the election. Before I move on and before I try to inform you some logistical details, I would like to invite to speak the president in office of the ACEEEO in this year, the Permanent Electoral Authority of Romania, and on behalf of PEA, the Vice President, Mr. Vajda Zsombor, will greet the Global Election Day Summit. Zsombor, please take the mic and the screen.
Thank you. Thank you, Zsolt. Distinguished international community, honored guests and dear friends. First of all, allow me to salute you and convey a message on behalf of Mr. Constantin Florin Mitulețu-Buică, President of the ACEEEO, of the Permanent Electoral Authority in Romania. Ever since 2005, every first Thursday of February, we celebrate together the Global Election Day. We are lucky to have built such a great tradition throughout the ACEEEO region. We are honored to share it from this year on with the EMBs, electoral stakeholders from all around the globe. Let us celebrate the electoral processes, which we have successfully concluded, learn from each other's experiences, remain the strong institutional pillars that will foster tomorrow's democratic processes. May the Global Election Day always remind us of a great responsibility and the great privilege that we hold. On my behalf, I would like to thank you for allowing me to say a few words before the GED forum. And I wish to especially thank the ACEEEO and the Secretary General for planning this event. It's great that we could be here. I believe it's important to constantly promote fair and transparent elections to really get to celebrate the developments of our field. We should take pride of our results and talk about them every chance we get. Taking a look at the forum's program, I believe that we could all take a bow in front of the years of work and reforms put into the elections, which are today's case studies. Elections are about democracy, but they are mostly about people. There are people working for the EMBs, people running in the electoral race, people playing the role of the watchdogs and observers, people reporting and people voting. The great part is that we are all in it together. We support each other, we learn from each other's mistakes or successes, and we keep ourselves true to our values. The last couple of years have been difficult, but having such a great professional community made us overcome the new challenges that arose. I would like to offer a heartfelt thank you for that. And I'm eager to hear your presentations. I'm looking forward to the next few hour sessions of regarding our interesting field. Thank you. Zsolt, floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zsombor, and I have to say also that we really appreciate the contribution of the Permanent Electoral Authority of Romania to the international arena as well. You have a broad range of bilateral, regional, or even international agreements and cooperation with other election management bodies or election stakeholder organizations. So we really appreciate your active participation in the election work. Dear colleagues, before we really start, I just would like to recall that as this is not a let's say usual conference, because usual conference you have at least one or maybe two topics to be discussed. So this is not a thematic event. So because how we intended to show the diversity of the EMBs as well, and the different approaches or the different projects or different experiences or different thoughts, what you have in mind in the beginning of 2022. Therefore, in our information we distributed, we asked you to at least to address a message to the election community, underlining your commitment or your EMB's commitment to the values related to the election, or present a best practice from your election system or from your election work, or address a challenge you face in your country, or to make any kind of other short statement related to the election. And of course, as at the beginning, of course, we expected that we have not only 5 or 10 or 15 speakers today. So unfortunately, we need to have some restriction, and we try to have a very strict rules with the 4 minutes of the maximum of the presentation. You will see a timer running on one of the screen as well, so you can follow how much time do you have. So if you love to speak, this event is definitely not for you, because then you have only 4 minutes. But if you would like to, let's say, to show any of your values or your thoughts on behalf of your EMBs, this is definitely your event. So I'm going to moderate the first 2 sessions, and I'm going to leave the America session into the hand of Richard Sudriet. So, but now I propose to start, because we are in time. Before I would like to give the floor to the colleagues from Asia, I would like to note that the colleagues from Australia unfortunately cannot join us due to the time difference, and of course also due to the fact that they are just in front of the federal election, so they are all busy with them. I have to say in brackets, it is absolutely impossible to find a date when some of us are not preparing any kind of election. So at least some EMBs are very busy from the globe, and of course you will see in the presentation as well that which colleagues they are just in the middle of the preparation. So as a first speaker, I would like to ask our friends from the Association of the World Election Bodies, Mr. Shaun Kim, who is the advisor to the Secretary General of the ACEEEO. Kim, you have the floor first. Please take your mic and screen.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. My name is Seung Kim. I'm working for the Secretariat of AWEB as an advisor to the Secretary General. I'm very happy and honored to be joining the Global Election Day Summit today. I'm very grateful to ACEEEO for giving me this great opportunity to say a few words on this special occasion. Taking this opportunity, I'd like to congratulate and thank ACEEEO and its members for taking such a great initiative to celebrate Global Election Day and developing it into a wonderful tradition for all electoral stakeholders. On behalf of the Secretariat of AWEB, I would like to briefly speak about the importance of international cooperation and the role of international organizations in the field of election management. As we all know, election has become a global norm. According to research, 90% of the countries in the world, which are about 180 countries, are electing their leaders and representatives through national election. On top of that, we have witnessed an increasing volume of exchange and cooperation between and among national election management bodies and international organizations. The Association of World Election Bodies, AWEB, is an example of globalization in election management. AWEB was founded in 2013 as a global level organization with its mission to identify latest trends, challenges, and developments in democratic electoral management, and to facilitate appropriate exchange of experience and expertise among members. Currently, it has its membership of 180 member EMBs from 108 countries. Speaking of the role of international organizations, I think the ultimate goal of election-related international organizations is to address and emphasize the importance of electoral democracy and universal values of election. Based on this goal, international organizations should be able to facilitate cooperation and coordination among members. Then how could international organizations deepen the cooperation among members? International organizations should constantly identify and set the agenda that may have a great effect on their members. In other words, they identify common challenges and issues shared by their members and facilitate exchange of information and experience by various means. So for example, immediately after the outbreak of COVID-19, many member EMBs of AWEB found themselves in trouble. In order to identify the common challenges and seek solutions, the AF Secretariat decided to organize a series of webinars covering and targeting all 5 continents. Those EMBs that were scheduled to hold elections expressed their concerns, and those EMBs who had already held elections in the midst of the pandemic shared their success stories and even failures. I think this kind of cooperation can also be achieved between and among international organizations by building strong partnerships. Different organizations have different strengths and different weaknesses in order to complement the relatively weak part of AWEB. AWEB has received a lot of kind support and cooperation from other organizations such as IFES and International IDEA, as well as ACEEEO. October this year, the 5th General Assembly meeting of AWEB is scheduled to take place in South Africa. So I really hope that 118 EMBs and partner organizations to AWEB will gather together and discuss important agenda items that may have great impact on the future of election management and democracy. Once again, congratulations on Global Elections Day, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Kim, and also thank you also for respecting the time. Even the timer just disappeared, but it will come back very soon. And thank you also for pointing out that we are still not there that we can say that all the countries around the world can elect on a democratic way the leaders or the political leaders. So we still have to work a lot on this. Thank you again, Kim. And I'm now calling Mr. Manas Sarimsakov, who is the director of the Center for Civic Education and Technologies on the Central Election Commission of the Kyrgyz Republic. Mr. Sarimsakov, please, you have the mic and the screen.
Thank you very much. Спасибо большое. Уважаемый генеральный секретарь, уважаемые коллеги, уважаемые участники, позвольте от имени Центральной избирательной комиссии Кыргызской Республики поприветствовать вас на сегодняшнем мероприятии и пожелать нам всем плодотворной работы, а также позвольте передать слова приветствия от председателя Центральной избирательной комиссии Кыргызской Республики Нуржан Карманбековны Шайлдыбековой. На сегодняшний день в рамках реформирования избирательного законодательства Кыргызской Республики, благодаря внедрению и применению современных технологий, решена проблема обеспечения достоверности и прозрачности результатов выборов, что исключает возможность фальсификации выборов на основных этапах выборного процесса. Тем не менее, в избирательном процессе оставалась проблема, связанная с подкупом голосов избирателей и злоупотреблением административным ресурсом, что послужило причиной кризиса в октябре 2020 года по итогам проведенных парламентских выборов. Так, в настоящее время со стороны государства принимаются меры по искоренению подкупа голосов и недопущению применения административного ресурса. Так, в ходе подготовки и проведения парламентских выборов в ноябре прошлого года, благодаря политической воле, усилиям правоохранительных органов, удалось в разы сократить случаи подкупа голосов избирателей. Кроме того, благодаря усилиям президента, принимаемым мерам Кабинета министров Кыргызской Республики, решена проблема, связанная с применением административного ресурса. Последовательно решаются вопросы по улучшению избирательного процесса. В один год, это в прошлом году, в Кыргызской республике проведены выборы всех уровней. Это выборы президента, парламентские выборы по новой избирательной системе, местные выборы, а также проведены референдумы. Таким образом, завершен определенный избирательный цикл. В межвыборный период мы намерены сосредоточиться на улучшении информированности и повышении правовой культуры участников избирательного процесса. Как вы знаете, улучшение уровня правовой культуры и информированности граждан об избирательных правах, избирательном законодательстве повысит понимание гражданами значимости проводимых общественно-политических процессов, значимость участия граждан в этих процессах, что в итоге обеспечит стабильность избирательного процесса. Информирование граждан о методах включения их в списки избирателей, прохождение биометрической идентификации, информация об используемых системах позволит повысить доверие граждан к избирательной системе и к выборам в целом. Для реализации этих задач в прошлом году Центральной избирательной комиссией был учрежден Центр гражданского образования и избирательных технологий. Центр учрежден с целью разъяснения и утверждения среди граждан ценностей демократии, укрепления толерантности, формирования у избирателей осознанного и ответственного выбора, информирования и обучения граждан о сути избирательного процесса, о статусе и полномочиях выборных органов, высших должностных лиц, о кандидатах и политических партиях. Вкратце, основными задачами Центра являются это правовое просвещение граждан, избирателей, общественных объединений, представителей политических партий, кандидатов, представителей средств массовой информации. Следующая задача – это организация обучения граждан, членов избирательной комиссии всех уровней, наблюдателей и других участников избирательного процесса, то есть всех участников избирательного процесса. Другой задачей является мониторинг и совершенствование избирательных технологий с учетом планов Центральной избирательной комиссии. Деятельность... Позвольте вкратце завершить буквально пару. Сегодня по случаю Всемирного дня выборов мы провели ряд мероприятий следующих. Это в Центральной избирательной комиссии организовали и прочитали лекцию на тему «Я будущий избиратель» для учеников старших классов общеобразовательной школы. Провели церемонию награждения волонтеров, которые помогали Центральной избирательной комиссии в проведении информационно-разъяснительной кампании в ноябре прошлого года на парламентских выборах. Организовали дебаты молодежные, провели интерактивную игру на тему «Мой выбор, мое право». В заключение хотел бы пожелать всем успешной работы. Спасибо за приглашение принять участие. Пожелать всем успехов и крепкого здоровья. Спасибо за внимание.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sarimsakov. All your effort and all your information about the election what you have last year, and of course all your effort you are making with better the Kyrgyz election system. Unfortunately, we don't have a translation today, so I do hope that at least some of the message went through all the participants as well. I'm calling now Mr. Vakhem Kushkarov, who is the deputy chairman of the Central Election Commission of Uzbekistan, for his intervention. Mr. Kushkarov, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Solnaki, Secretary General, dear participants of the summit, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Vakhem Kushkarov. I'm a Deputy Chairman of the Central Election Commission of Uzbekistan. And on behalf of the Central Election Commission of the Republic of Uzbekistan, let me express our profound gratitude to the Secretary General of the Association of European Election Officials, Mr. Solnaki, for organizing this summit and for providing us such a great opportunity to exchange our views and experience amongst our colleagues. And Central Election Commission of Uzbekistan and the countries of our association region are linked by a partnership and joint efforts to ensure the electoral rights of citizens and improvement of the electoral processes. Therefore, it's natural that we closely collaborate in various formats. This summit is also called upon to make its contribution to building up cooperation. As Mr. Vaida said, we support each other, and we learn from each other, and it's very, very important for us having such a great platform. It should be especially noted that today's summit is an important platform for our practical interaction. It's encouraging that this summit is being attended by distinguished international organizations and our colleagues from election management bodies. The purpose of the Global Election Day is to celebrate elections that are considered our most important democratic institution. I believe that this summit will be held in a highly professional manner, and the implementation of its program will allow the participants to strengthen the potential for cooperation, establish useful contacts, and enter into new joint initiatives. Taking this pleasant opportunity, the Central Election Commission of Uzbekistan congratulates the Association of World Election Bodies, as well as our colleagues from other countries on the occasion of Global Election Day. Dear colleagues, the Central Election Commission of Uzbekistan pays special attention to the development of democracy in the country. Elections in Uzbekistan are taking place in the context of fundamental changes and democratic reforms, as well as a new political environment that attracts increasing attention from the international community. In this connection, I would like to briefly overview the issue of cooperation between Uzbekistan and international organizations during the electoral process. Observing the elections by the international community is essential in ensuring the transparency and fairness of the electoral process. During the parliamentary elections in 2019 and the recent presidential elections, we received numerous observers from prestigious and competent international organizations such as the OSCE ODIHR, the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the Commonwealth of Independent States, the Council of Europe, the Inter-Parliamentary Assembly, Commonwealth of Independent States, as well as observers from parliaments and electoral bodies of foreign countries. While participating in elections, observers collect information to assess the current electoral process, study electoral legislation and practice, and evaluate the activities of election commissions. As a result of such cooperation, special attention is paid to ensuring the electoral rights of citizens through further democratization of the national electoral system. So in this context, I very appreciate for giving me opportunity to speak to in this summer summit, dear participants. The principal objective of the Global Election Day are to confirm the irreversibility of the democratization process. I believe the discussions at the summit will be meaningful and constructive. I wish all participants a successful day. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kushkarov, for your kind greetings as well. I think we absolutely agree with all your line. Dear participants, I forgot to mention that this event is streamlined on the YouTube as well, the ACEEO YouTube channel. So we also distributed the information. So those of the colleagues who are not able to join to the Zoom application, then they can follow us, or you can, after your speech, for example, you can follow us at the YouTube channel as well. Dear colleagues, I propose to move forward to West, and let's go to Africa. And then from Africa first, I'm calling Gore Justine Doua, who is the chief of party of the STEP program in ACEEEO. Please, Gore, step in.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. talking this afternoon on behalf of ACEEEO, and I'm very happy to join this interesting panel. For those who don't know ACEEEO, ACEEEO is a non-profit organization established in 1996, headquartered in Johannesburg, in South Africa, with regional office in Abidjan, in Cote d'Ivoire, and field offices across Africa, where we mainly work on election and support to electoral processes across the continent. We, as ACEEEO, seek to influence key political processes that underpin election in Africa, and to promote development of and popularization of election principle and good practices through knowledge production and dissemination, election observation, which is our core business, and technical support to election stakeholders, including EMBs, civil society, political parties across the continent. I would like just to mention a case of best practice during the electoral process in Cote d'Ivoire during the 2020 and 2021 electoral process, which will be the only case I will mention because of time. ACEEEO deployed a long-term, a technical team, a core team, a long-term and short-term observation mission during the 2020 presidential election and the 2021 legislative election in Cote d'Ivoire in the context of violence and violent protests, as you may know. And after this particular election, ACEEEO initiated a post-election follow-up process because we noticed that our work in election observation generally stopped after the results are published and for most mission game over. So we organized a workshop in Yamoussoukro, the political capital town of Cote d'Ivoire, to capitalize on the recommendation made by all the observation mission. And it was an interesting case I would like to share because it was organized jointly with NDI and the Independent Electoral Commission of Cote d'Ivoire. And it was attended by 30 Ivorian stakeholders, in particular civil society organizations, political parties, and all the institutions involved in election. And it was led by the presence of the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, the ambassador of USA, and the representative of European Union. What I would like us to note as a takeaway is that the exercise, the 3 days exercise resulted in an harmonized table of recommendation from various groups, which will be subject of reflection and action on the ground to follow up on the recommendation presented by Electoral Observation Mission in Cote d'Ivoire. This is something unique because most of the organizations used to have their own recommendation, but this time around we harmonize the recommendation and we'll follow up depending on the area of expertise of each organization in partnership with the Electoral Commission and the donor community. Thank you very much. And I'm happy to join. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Justin, and please give our best regards to all our colleagues in ACEEEO. We have a long-term and fruitful cooperation with you. Thank you very much again, and that's moving not so far away. I'm calling our long-time friend Terry Salani, who is the Executive Chairman of the Institute of Election Management Services in Africa. Terry, please take over.
Thank you very much, Chairperson and distinguished colleagues. A tradition of celebrating the Global Election Day is a noble one. We must value it and treasure it. It is a day where we recognize the role and the importance of electoral officials and democracy itself. It is also a day where we share ideas and pledge our solidarity to each other. Few years ago, in Malawi, the president of Malawi attempted to cancel the polls, disregarding the constitution. President Banda did this when she realized that she was likely not to win the election, and then clearly trying to make sure that she gets elected by any means necessary. Justice Maxine Mbendera, who was the chairperson of the commission at that stage, stood his ground and refused to be intimidated. He became loyal to his mandate, which is the mandate of having to ensure free and fair election, and refused to be intimidated by the president of Malawi. Often politicians attack the electoral processes and system, as well as the electoral officials, when they don't get their way. They do this in order to try to delegitimize the process so that they can continue to remain in power. Electoral officials must always remember that an election is the most precious commodity in the hands of the electoral officials. It has to be defended at all times. An electoral official must embrace values of integrity, courage, toughness, honesty, trustworthiness, but be consultative as well as be truthful to the cause. A day like this is the day when we show our commitment to these values and commit to do our job without any fear or favor. We must also pledge solidarity and support each other, those of us who are working in the election field. We who are the midwives of democracy must remain loyal to our mandate by ensuring that we deliver free and fair elections at all times. I thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Terry, and especially, of course, I just would like to echo the solidarity what you mentioned, because we definitely need to be solidarity with each other, and we at the same time we have to support each other. Thank you, Terry again. I'm now turning and calling Mrs. Maribel Sherfan, who is the program coordinator of the Master in Electoral Policy and Administration program. Let's call it MAPA. I think most of you know this program, but if not, then Maribel we'll speak about that. Maribel, please take it.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It is my pleasure to be one of the speakers today. My name is Maribel Sherfan, and I'm the program coordinator of the Master in Electoral Policy and Administration, provided by the Santana School of Advanced Studies in cooperation with the UN Institute of Training and Research, as well as International IDEA. Today, I will briefly explain what this program entails and how it is being used in a new initiative called InnovElection. I will just take 2 seconds to share my screen. As a brief summary about the university, the Scuola Santana launched in '95 the international training program for conflict management, in the frame of which about 700 training programs for conflict management and electoral courses as such have been delivered, especially in Europe and in Africa. The SSA has thus carried out a series of diversified, innovative election trainings, including, for instance, training courses on ensuring efficient investigations, prevention of election fraud, electoral security, and electoral administration courses for officials, training courses on electoral observation for African staff, and so forth. The ITPCM has thus been seen harnessing a large array of training needs for electoral personnel, whether nationally or internationally, by extending and expanding its programs and activities progressively in number, scope, and geographical pool. The MEPA program is an online master program designed to provide a comprehensive and advanced educational curriculum on electoral processes to current or prospective election professionals. We can see that through a comprehensive overview of all the electoral phases. The teaching methodologies rely mostly on the analysis of real situations and concrete examples and include a high number of drills, simulation, and role plays. The cited program also aims to offer to its students the knowledge and skills necessary to serve as election administrators, members of election management bodies, or electoral observers. Basically, the CET program responds mostly to a global structural demand for qualified electoral administrators and contributes in its own way to reduce the gender gap in electoral administration by namely strengthening women's role in the sector, especially in senior positions. Now let's talk a bit about the new initiative, which is Innovelection. Funded by the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation and conducted by the Sant'Anna School of Advanced Studies in cooperation with the European Center for Electoral Support and UNITAR, this initiative optimizes the COVID-19 confinement by enhancing electoral stakeholders' leadership, conflict and quality management capacities, and basically contributing to the digitalization of electoral processes. We have all seen a lot of obstacles due to COVID-19, and this initiative was trying to solve some of these problems. Since its inception, the impact of the Innovelection project has extended to a total of 35 beneficiary countries and more than 1,088 representatives of electoral management bodies in Africa. They basically attempted to deliver activities in English, French, Portuguese, and Arabic to hit the targeted pool of students. It basically offers a hybrid approach to training delivery where a flexible menu of training curricula and remote solutions are made available to mitigate these challenges that we talked about, which are generated by the pandemic. The project aims to provide adequate tools for addressing social, economic, political, and organizational challenges, which are associated with elections in Africa during a pandemic, with particular attention to the prevention of conflicts and violence related to the consultations. Through the MAPA program, this project has provided a dynamic and interactive platform where election administrators can deepen their knowledge and develop a set of skills targeting several topics within the team of the electoral process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miribel, about your presentation about this very interesting program. I think it was quite well-known program, and I absolutely convincing colleagues to join to this program, because I think this should have absolutely an added value to the electoral officials. Thank you very much again, Miribel.
Thank
you. Of course, I forgot to mention many issues as well, but as we do not have so much time for discussion at the end, please use the chat if you want to have any special question to the speakers. And I also asking all the speakers to follow the chat if there are any question to you. I try to point out any question in the chat as well. So please use this communication channel. Let's move forward, and our next speaker is Justice Dr. Chifundo Kachale, who is the chairman of the Electoral Commission of Malawi. And this is the first time, at least for me, to meet electoral officers from Malawi. A warm welcome from the ACEEO side as well. And Mr. Kachale, you have the floor, please. I'm calling Mr. Chifundo Kachale from Malawi. Okay, we come back to Malawi, hopefully, but then let's move forward. And our next speaker is Mr. Valery Shikorov, who is an electoral field coordinator in the United Nations Assistance Mission in Somalia. So please step in.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Very good. Mr. Chairman, electoral Urbi et Orbi from Somalia, from Africa. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, Somalia is here. My name is Valery Shirokov. I work as electoral advisor at the United Nations mission in Somalia. Allow me to offer a bird's view on the ongoing electoral process in Somalia. A quick intro would be that Somalia is a federal republic that consists of five federal member states plus Somaliland. In 2017, Somalia pledged to conduct universal suffrage elections by 2021, but finally opted for another indirect election similar to the one conducted in 2016. The mandate of the current federal president expired in February 2021. Somalia has a bicameral federal parliament, and each federal member state has its own state assembly. The political power in Somalia is divided between four major clans and the cluster of minority clans, so-called 0.5. And this political arrangement is called the 4.5 power sharing formula. By September last year, each federal member state's assembly elected their representatives to Somalia's upper house. And the selection process/selection process for the lower house, which comprises the 275 MPs, is ongoing. Mr. President, allow me to detail a few key features of the process. The process provides for a two-constituency electoral caucus in the federal member states, each having a number of MPs to elect. That is, each clan represented in the 4.5 power sharing formula has a defined representation that is translated in seats. For example, the southwest state of Somalia, where I am in now, has a total of 69 seats, which are divided between the clans that populate the southwest. For each seat, there is a delegate selection committee that selects 101 electoral delegates. Each delegate selection committee consists of 3 traditional elders and 2 civil society representatives, of which 1 is a woman. Thus, each seat is voted for by 101 electoral delegates, and therefore 27,000 electoral delegates constitute the electorate. The EMBs are the federal and state election limitation teams, 1 per each federal member state. And the disputes and challenges are looked after by the Electoral Dispute Resolution Committee. Distinctly, Somalia is a patriarchal society where women stand little chance for elected public office. Therefore, a 30% women's quota is therefore in place. By now, Somalia has barely elected 1/3 of the total number of all the MPs, which is 275, insecurity caused by Al-Shabaab, including its concerted effort to foil elections, drought, lack of consensus and compromise among the Somali leaders, ongoing clan rivalry, and other key detractors of the process. This said, there are ample opportunities, funding opportunities for international donors to support domestic election observation and civil society, notably in the southwest, where I am. To conclude, the ongoing election process is certainly the election to watch in 2022, as Somalia will be setting the tone for security and development in the entire Horn of Africa. I would like to stop here and thank you for your attention. Back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Valery. Just a quick question: that does this the UN assistance? It's a larger one, or you are the only one coordinator, or how big is this assistance mission?
This is a political mission of the United Nations in Somalia. We are supported by so-called United Nations technical assistance mission called UNSOS, and these provide security. There is also African forces deployed to Somalia, and these provide mainly security. They cooperate with the Somali National Army, with the police, and part of the support is the support to the electoral process in Somalia. As I said, there are 5 member states in Somalia. I have people like me in other federal member states, who provide assistance to the EMBs on the ground.
Thank you very much, Akil, and thank you also to have this interesting presentation about the Somalian system. Meanwhile, we received information from Malawi that due to the bad weather condition, the internet is not stable enough to join us with the microphone or with the camera as well. So we do hope that we can host our colleagues from Malawi next time. Let's move forward now to Zambia, and I'm calling to Mr. Roy Katongo, who is the Director of the Electoral Operations in the Electoral Commission of Zambia. Mr. Katongo, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moderator. Greetings to you all, colleagues. I am Roy Katongo, Director of the Electoral Commission of Zambia. We are happy to join in this wonderful celebration. I'm going to give a short statement on behalf of the Electoral Commission of Zambia. Zambia held its last general election on Thursday, 12 August 2021, which saw the main opposition win the election and form government. This is the third time that the Electoral Commission of Zambia has overseen the smooth and peaceful transition of power from the ruling party to an opposition party. This has happened in 1991, 2011, and 2021. And these elections were observed by many international and local organizations. The voter turnout in this election was 4,959,332, representing 70.61 of the registered voters. That's a percentage of 70.61 of registered voters. In the previous general election in 2016, the turnout was at 57.7%. So there was a huge increase in these elections. Prior to that, the Electoral Commission of Zambia conducted voter registration in 34 days from November to December 2020. And out of the eligible 8.4 million citizens, we captured 7,023,499 as registered voters. And in this, female voters are the majority. This is a new register. We did away with the old register because of the challenges we had. And so the youth account for 56.33% on this new register. I should also mention that for the first time in the history of Zambia, inmates in correctional facilities or prisons participated in elections by registering as voters and did take part in voting. We as a commission developed modalities to facilitate for the inmates to vote. Zambia, we had the elections under the COVID-19 pandemic. As such, we developed standard operating procedures, which among other things, guided political parties and candidates to adhere to the COVID-19 prevention measures during the campaigns. The commission had some suspensions in terms of political parties and candidates that did not follow the guidelines. So this was in line with the COVID-19 measures. And the measures included suspending of the campaigns and also allowing political parties to use other alternative means. The COVID-19 also had an impact on our electoral activities as a commission. For instance, voter education was impacted. We had to do away with our traditional methods of doing voter education to other methods. The other challenge other than COVID was political parties and candidates failing in some instances to adhere to the Electoral Code of Conduct. And like I've said, the commission had no option but to suspend some political parties and candidates for a specified period. This went as a warning to other candidates that would have wanted to go against the laid down procedures. In conclusion, I should mention that as a commission, we are satisfied that we delivered a credible election amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. And as of now, we are working on the post-election reviews to draw lessons on what worked well, what didn't work well, and then move forward in terms of planning. So I thank you most sincerely, and this is where we end our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kotongo. Very interesting, especially the good news that the turnout is increasing really well. This is definitely a good news, and I think it is very good to see all your effort you made and you are going to make for making the election better. Thank you again, and then let's move now to Zanzibar. I'm calling Mr. Mabruk Yabu Malkame, who is the vice chairperson of the Electoral Commission of Zanzibar. Mr. Makame, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is my pleasure on behalf of the chairman of the Zanzibar Electoral Commission, His Excellency Retired Justice Hamid Mahmoud Hamid, to participate and join the global gathering of the elections officials and experts to celebrate elections and exchange best practices related to elections. Since I joined the electoral management body, it is my first time to have this opportunity of exchanging experience with Global Election Summit. Zanzibar Electoral Commission, being active electoral management body in East Africa, SADC region, and as a member of AWEB, has participated in many gatherings, but not a gathering of this level. Therefore, we would like to extend our sincere appreciations to the Association of European Election Officials. We commend your organization to gather election officials to exchange election ideas and challenges for the betterment of global democracy. Zanzibar Electoral Commission has many lessons and challenges for the Global Election Summit and experts to learn from and exchange experiences. However, due to limited time, I will address a few of them as follows. Our best practices. Zanzibar, the first one, Zanzibar Electoral Commission implements its functions according to the Constitution and the election laws of Zanzibar. It also implements the Gender and Social Inclusion Policy of 2015. Through this policy, women, youth, and people with disabilities are considered during the implementation of the election activities. The second one, all vulnerable groups of voters, that is people with disabilities, lactating and pregnant women and elders, are given special cards to identify and allow them to enter the polling stations without queuing. The third one, we use tactical ballot folders to enable people with visual impairment to vote. The fourth, we ensure punctuality and efficiency in development of electoral material. Our challenges. The first one is financial constraint to finance Zanzibar Electoral Commission's activity. The second one, interference of the electoral management body by some political parties during implementation of its activities. The third and the last one I would like to share with you, because of the limited time, lack of trust to the electoral management body by some stakeholders. Thank you very much, and that's the end of my presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I used your time nicely.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Makanga, respecting the time as well, and also mentioning especially the treatment of the vulnerable group, and of course also the trust, because that is without trust even between any stakeholder, between the voters and the electoral management bodies, between the political parties and the electoral management bodies, simply doesn't work. So we have to work a lot, of course, to keep the trust on an adequate level, and of course also towards the political parties and also to the voters as well. Thank you again. And then I'm now calling the Commissioner Kiva from the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. Mr. Kiva, take the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and good day to all fellow participants. I am talking to you from the Republic of Zimbabwe, representing the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, of which I'm privileged to serve as a member, a commissioner. I am seizing this opportunity to join everyone else in celebrating this very important day, the Global Election Day. I want to just give you an overview of some of the activities of my electoral management board. Firstly, I would want to recall that Zimbabwe continues to honor its commitment to holding elections as provided for by the Constitution every 5 years, and also to adhere to international standards for holding periodic elections. In this regard, we as ZEC, the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, have supported the electoral reform process to include participation of women, youth, and minorities through a number of processes. First, enactment of provisions that provide for women and youth quotas in parliament and provincial councils. This is in place. Two, introduction of technologies in the electoral process, such as checking of names on voters' roll using commission website and USSD codes. Thirdly, reducing distances traveled by voters to polling stations and risk of double voting by the introduction of polling station specific voter registration. We have also introduced the use of automated fingerprint identification system to curb double registration and voting. Last but not least, we as ZEC participate in election observer missions, as well as invite other election observer missions to observe our elections in order for us to learn from the best practices of sister countries. Currently, and I think this is what I would want you to note, is that we are engaged in a nationwide mobile voter registration blitz to reach out to all potential registrants. This has already started from the 1st of this month, and it will go on until the 28th of February this year. That's the first phase. The second phase will be from the 11th to the 30th of April 2022. This is, after that voter registration, this will assist in the delimitation exercise. We are preparing for harmonized elections, that is a presidential, parliamentary, as well as local authority elections in the year 2023. So we are going to have a census which will help us undertake the delimitation exercise. I wish to emphasize that in all these activities, we are following the COVID-19 protocols to prevent the spread of COVID. I thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you. Good day.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Kiva. And I do hope that not only with you, because we never met, so I do hope that in the near future we can meet face to face as well, not only via the video conference. Thanks so much for your input. Let's move forward. Our next speaker is Mrs. Sabra Bano, who is the director of the Gender Concerns International. And I guess that Mrs. Bano will introduce also the Gender Concern International as well. What you are doing and what is the connection to the electoral world.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure and honor to be here celebrating this important day with the global community. It is also a gender election day because democracy is about equality, equality in electoral processes, including its management, and of course, its voting right and its being candidates as well. We are based in the Netherlands. Gender Concerns is a non-governmental organization, and GEOM, which is Gender Election Observation Mission, that instrument was launched in 2008, and with Dutch government and other international European donor communities, we have been able to launch these missions to various countries, especially after Arab Spring, to support democracy. GEOM, Gender Election Observation Missions, are women-led, women-managed, and women-reported missions. And we promote women not just as voters, but most importantly, women's role in electoral management and also as candidates. So not about governance, but also decision-making parity. We have been advising to various election commissions. We are also signatory to a UN Declaration of Principle of International Election Observation, DOPs. And we work with international coordinations in countries where we observe elections. Our last two elections were Morocco in September 2021 and March, the Netherlands, identifying women's role in elections. The recommendations made are shared with international community, but most importantly, the election management body of the country that we observe elections in for, but also we work with mainly women organizations, major local women's organizations. So later on, together with their national institutions, recommendations would be promoted through new parliamentarians. And I think this is the contribution Gender Election Observation Mission makes to strengthen the capacity of local national institutions, but also civil society actors. The challenges and opportunities are a lot. We are praised by many world leaders. We are invited many election commissions, civil society organizations. Unfortunately, it is always a struggle for a women-led mission to find timely resources to be able to honor all the requests that we have from various actors. We have been also assessing the scope of observation mission, including the recent work in Switzerland, Belgium, Sweden, because even you have feminist government, it doesn't mean gender equality and parity is fully achieved. There's a lot of struggle also within Europe that requires our attention. This is the motivation we have. And we have also done need assessment mission in Ukraine. These are the countries where we think we need support from local partners. We are looking for cooperation with EMBs and other actors. And thank you very much for giving us time and associating this day to the gender equality agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Bano. Very true. This is the day of the equality as well, or should be the day of the equality as well. What our very small contribution from the ACEEEO countries, at least last year, the chairpersons of the ACEEEO member states went up close to 40%. So I think this was the highest number in the past 30 years. Of course, there are always a change, but we definitely have a lot of work on this. So we will be happy to work with you in the future as well on the equality issues. Thanks so much again. And let's move forward to Georgia and calling Mr. Georgi Kalandarishvili, who is the chairperson of the Central Election Commission of Georgia. And then since you just stepped in the summer, we had no chance to greet you in person. This is only a half in person because just via video conference. But first, let me congratulate your appointment as the chairperson of the CEEEO Georgia. And please take the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Zonowski. It's my really pleasure and honor having such opportunity to receive such congratulations from your side, as well as being the part of this important event today. So, dear colleagues, again and again, let me express that it's really pleasure to take this opportunity and speak today as the chairperson of the Central Election Commission at the Global Elections Day Summit 2022. So this event and the platform itself are increasingly important as they aim to promote institutionalization and professionalization of democratic procedures at the international level and unite 25 election management bodies worldwide. So additionally, it allows us to share our best practices, discuss challenges, and think about practices that can be successfully replicated in our respective countries. So this day is a celebration of elections, so the key events in the democratic world, and I'm delighted to share with you some of our innovations and practices which can be of your interest. So in October 2021, we have conducted municipal elections, and among important priorities, we have highlighted and set three main priorities. This is transparent practices, capacity development of election administration and its employees, and adoption of technological innovations. Accordingly, I, as the new chair of the Central Election Commission, decided to bring more transparency to the administration's work and election procedures at large, and therefore Central Election Commission session, the place where the key policies are adopted, I decided to live stream so that any electoral stakeholder and simply our citizens could see live how and where important decisions are made. The next move was to carry out the vote recount procedure, which we did at an unprecedented scale for the first time in the election history, which overall contributed to the transparency of the electoral process. While recounting at such a scale was a novelty, video recording of the vote counting procedure was another step in ensuring transparency to this process. Video recording of vote counting procedure was provided in almost all polling stations. Then video footage was uploaded promptly on the Google Drive platform, and all the interested persons could access the footage. Additionally, we adopted a modified voting booth, which was cut from the front side. The front side was removed, front panel, for just to imagine it. It really had the possibility to prevent voters entering the polling booths from some kind of a manipulation. So we installed such booths in the first round in the capital city and in the second round in all polling stations. Indeed, the Georgian Election Administration conducted a number of activities to ensure the transparency of the electoral process, but I just wanted to highlight the basic ones. So speaking of the capacity development of election administration and its employees, we adopted the renewed concept of training the precinct election commission members. The training was increased from 4 to 6 stages, and it envisaged recommendations of observer organizations. I guess that I ran out by time, but if I might, just 2 more minutes. So one of the most important and highly regarded initiatives of our administration is modernizing the voting and vote counting process in Georgia by implementing voting technology based on poll count optical scanners So this technology was selected based on the internationally voting standards and recommendations, as it allows fast and accurate results tabulation while maintaining the paper ballots for a manual recount if needed. While we had the experience of piloting such technology in recent years, the time the scale was big and involved across 31 polling stations during the municipal elections. What's more important, all electoral stakeholders were involved every step of the way, and the results of the electronic and manual counting of elections coincided with 99.7%, making it a successful project. We introduced a new electronic service, online submission of appeals. It enabled appellants to submit their appeals online. In other words, simplified this procedure for electoral stakeholders who are unable to for different reasons to submit hard copies to the election commissions. To counter disinformation, we set up the Information Protection Center in a pilot regime that combated disinformation about the election administration in traditional media and social networks. The center enables voters and other stakeholders to receive credible information about elections promptly. Electoral integrity and security have been one of the strategic priorities for the election administration and remain so. And improving trust towards electoral process and election administration is the goal of the election administration. And in this light, countering the disinformation stands out as the issue that needs to be addressed, along with addressing biased observation, as well as ensuring transparency of the electoral process and strengthening international cooperation. So with this, I would like to wish you the best practices in your organization and success in your endeavors. And I hope that very soon we will be able to meet in Georgia or elsewhere and discuss main electoral issues tete-a-tete. Thank you so much, and sorry for using your time. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you very much, Mr. Kalandarishvili, especially pointing another important word, the transparency, which is I think is one of our key element that we have to put it at the end of the list at the end of the day. Thank you very much again, and I'm now calling Mr. Ivan Mushket, who is the Deputy Head of the Interparliamentary Assembly of the Commonwealth Independent States Council Secretariat. So we are now jumping to St. Petersburg. Mr. Mushket, please.
Добрый день, уважаемые участники саммита. С 1994 года международные наблюдатели от Межпарламентской ассамблеи принимают участие в мониторинге выборов. В общей сложности за прошедшее время был проведен мониторинг более 140 избирательных кампаний и референдумов.
Good afternoon, dear participants of the summit. Since 1994, international observers of the Interparliamentary Assembly of Commonwealth of Independent States have been participating in the elections monitoring. In total, the Interparliamentary Assembly has monitored more than 140 campaigns and referendums.
В своей деятельности наблюдатели от Межпарламентской ассамблеи руководствуются положениями Конвенции о стандартах демократических выборов, избирательных прав и свобод, которая стала гарантом проведения выборов как одного из политических и правовых инструментов стабильного гражданского общества и устойчивого развития государства, а также организации общественного и международного наблюдения за выборами.
The IPA-CIS observers are guided in their activities by the statements of the Convention on Standards of Democratic Elections, Electoral Rights and Freedoms, which has become the guarantor for election conducting as one of political and legal instruments of stable civil society, as well as the organization of public and international election observation.
Конвенция – это уникальный документ, в котором впервые в мировой практике проведена систематизация стандартов демократических выборов в рамках нового межгосударственного образования Содружества независимых государств и их закрепления в формате международного правового акта, конвенции, носящей обязательный характер.
The convention is a unique document that for the first time in international practice systematized the standards of democratic elections in the field of new interstate formation, the Commonwealth of Independent States, and their consolidation in a format for an international legal act, a binding convention.
7 октября 2022 года отмечается 20 лет со дня подписания конвенции на заседании Совета глав государств Содружества независимых государств в городе Кишинев. К этому событию приурочено и 6-7 октября в Санкт-Петербурге состоится международная научно-практическая конференция «Конвенция Содружества независимых государств о стандартах демократических выборов. Открытое пространство международного сотрудничества», организаторами которой выступит Межпарламентская ассамблея, Содружество независимых государств, Исполнительный комитет СНГ и Центральная избирательная комиссия Российской Федерации.
On the 7th of October 2022, there will be 20th of anniversary of signing of this convention at the meeting of the Council of CIS Heads of State in Kishinev. The International Scientific Practical Conference, CIS Convention on Standards of Democratic Elections, open space for international cooperation. It's time to coincide with the anniversary and will be held in St. Petersburg on next October 6 to 7. It will be organized by the Interparliamentary Assembly, the CIS Executive Committee, and Central Election Commission of the Russian Federation.
На конференции планируется обсуждение роли конвенции в реализации и защите избирательных прав, новых технологий в избирательном процессе, стандартов наблюдения за выборами и участия молодежи в выборах.
The main topics of the conference to discuss are the role of the convention in the implementation and protection of electoral rights, new technologies in the electoral process, election observation standards, participation of young people in elections.
Поздравляю вас с Всемирным днем выборов, символом прав граждан на реализацию права избирать и быть избранным.
I congratulate you on Global Election Day, a symbol of realization of citizens' right to vote and to be elected.
Желаю организаторам и участникам саммита плодотворной работы и конструктивного диалога.
I wish the organizers and all participants of the summit fruitful work and constructive dialogue.
Уверен, что сегодняшнее мероприятие внесет полезный вклад в расширение и укрепление межрегионального и международного сотрудничества, а предложения участников саммита найдут свое применение на практике. Благодарю за внимание.
I'm sure that today's event will make a useful contribution to the expansion and strengthening of interregional and international cooperation, and the proposals of the summit participants will find their application in practice. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Muscat, especially recalling the importance of the convention of standard, and we do hope that we can meet in person in the conference in October. Thank you very much again. And our next speaker will be the former chairwoman of the Central Election Commission of Lithuania, Laura Matjošaitytė. Dear Laura, please take the floor.
So good afternoon, dear Zsolt, dear colleagues, friends. Thank you for your ideas and minds. Actually, very impressive. And today, EMBs, election experts, voters, and all participants of the election process are celebrating the Fest of Democracy, Global Elections Day. On one side, elections is a process in which people vote to choose a person or group of people to hold an official position. But in essence, it's much more. Elections are not only about free and fair democratically procedures, different electoral systems, voters, equal rights to all candidates, political campaigns, legitimate election results. It's about the level of democracy, citizens' choice to govern the country through democratically elected representatives, responsibility for votes. It's about election commissioners, which work hard to ensure that each voter could vote where and when we want. Years by years, as I see from Lithuania's case, voters use their right to vote more and more often than a decade ago. Scientific studies reveal that in Lithuania, we have two different groups of voters. The first group votes in each election, and the second group votes only in separate elections. But if sometimes we choose to ignore specific elections, after some time, we come back and vote. But why do we do that? The answer is very simple. After the election, some voters feel disappointed. But as we're saying, every cloud has a silver lining. That's why here is a great chance for EMBs to help voters to find the right way. EMBs just need to figure out when and how to send a magic message to voters and invite them to use their voting rights actively. Of course, it's not easy, but it's more than possible. Each election is different. On one side, it depends on the type of elections. On other side, from the political, economic, and if we can see from the last 2 years' experience, the health situation in the country and around the world. We all know that you can plan the darkest scenarios, but you can be never sure that all things from the election organization side will go well. Every election is a new challenge for the EMBs and, of course, commissioners, such wonderful persons with a huge feeling of responsibility and high belief in that what we are doing. Taking the opportunity, today I want to say a huge thank you to each election commissioner around the globe. You are doing a great job for your country and your people. Please don't stop. Your democracy needs you. And the last thing, what I would like to say, during the last 30 years, we talked about many things, starting from political campaign finance and finance control, voters turnout, election disputes, internet voting, disinformation in elections, political advertising in social media platforms, elections during the COVID-19 pandemic, and etc. It's no doubt that sharing the experience always is a good idea. That's why I want to say thank you to such organizations as ACEEEO and others to help us to be in touch and to learn from each other, to see how some problems are solved in other countries. So let's stay together, let's search for the best solutions, and happy Global Elections Day again. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Laura. Very, very true words, and let me thanks to your work, what you did during your term as the chairperson of the Central Election Commission of Lithuania as well, and of course we expect your commitment to the ACEEEO in the future as well. Thanks so much, Laura. And we stay in Vilnius, in Lithuania, and I'm now calling the head of the law and investigation unit in the Central Election Commission of Lithuania, Rokas Stabingas. Rokas, please take the mic and speak.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me begin with a short glimpse into the history. The first democratic elections in Lithuania were conducted in 1920, more than a century ago, when the Constituent Parliament was elected by direct, democratic, universal, equal, and secret suffrage, which was extended both to men and women. And Lithuania was one of the first countries in the world where women were given the right to vote. And these principles are still valid today, and we are proud being able to continue this tradition and celebrate the Global Election Day together with you. And back then, in 1920, election campaign was conducted in the market squares. Candidates were speaking from the horse carriages and barrels, while posters and national press were not yet the key vehicles for campaigning. There was also a total ban on alcohol 1 month before the vote to have a sober elections. And by all estimates, the turnout was huge, between 70 and 90%, even though full voter registers were not available and voters didn't have, not all voters had identification documents. Today, we campaign on social networks and on the internet. We have electronic voter lists. However, the turnout is below 50%. In the meantime, in Lithuania, we started a discussion about internet voting as a mode of voting for voters abroad. But the constitutional law experts expressed doubts that it would be compatible with the principle of equality if the residents in the country don't have such an opportunity. Today, the Central Electoral Commission is planning a feasibility study designed to answer all the questions about internet voting. But the problem is that we have more questions and doubts than answers. One more positive development of these days is the draft electoral code, which is already in the parliament and should be adopted this year. The draft electoral code would encompass 4 separate laws of each elections: parliamentary, presidential, local elections, and elections to the European Parliament, plus the law on the Central Electoral Commission and the law on funding of political campaigns. There will be no national elections this year in Lithuania, but we will start preparations for the local elections in the early 2023. One of the main challenges is a smooth transition to the new legal framework, including adoption of new bylaws and adaptation of our information system to the new requirements. And of course, the question of internet voting remains open, and it requires a lot of expertise and dedication. This year, we are also looking forward to international cooperation and wishing all the best for those election management bodies which will have elections. And happy Global Elections Day. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Rokas. You brought into another subject, the internet voting, which is, let's say, not the basic. Originally was not the basic of the election basic issue or standards, but now it should be somehow because now we are in the 21st century and we can do a lot of things via the internet, almost everything, except for the general election, so with a very few exemptions. So thank you very much, and wishing good luck to all the colleagues in the Central Election Commission of Lithuania. Thank you, Rokas, again, and let's move to Moldova. That's my favorite training center. So if I have to speak about an example, which is let's say the best example when Election Commission setting up a training center, and I think it's the Moldavian civic education and electoral training center is one of the best. And now I have a privilege to pass the floor to the director of the center, Doiana Bordeianu. Doiana, please.
Thank you. Dear audience, dear colleagues, today on the International Election Day, at the first global summit dedicated to this day, I want to highlight an achievement of the electoral authorities worldwide. This is a continuous and consistent concern for quality of the services that we all provide to the citizens. This quality is directly linked to the professional profile of the election officials. In many countries, including mine, there is little or no requirements about a certain educational background of the people employed to serve as election officials. Still, the professionalism of these persons is of an utmost importance. To successfully carry out their electoral jobs, they must have knowledge, skills, professional attitude, and experience. It has already become a good practice to set up training, education, and resource centers as an instrument of delivering capacity-building programs to a variety of electoral stakeholders. I am proud to represent here Moldova and the Center for Continuous Electoral Training, which recently celebrated 10 years since its founding. It has been 10 years since the Central Electoral Commission of the Republic of Moldova decided that specialized training in the electoral field is a priority. During these 10 years, we became a center of reference, a model center for other countries in the region and beyond. Through training, we share the best electoral practices to those involved in the organization and conducting of elections. Through programs of civic and electoral education, we encourage people, starting with the youngest one, to believe in the power of their choice, because we know that democracy can be learned. We all know that the deployment of an election is a very complex and challenging task. The training facilities, as it is Moldovan CICDE, supports electoral authorities to have a better performance, to take election to the next level of organization. What I like most in my job are the people involved in conducting elections. Both at the national and international level, we are all a family. a huge one that is united by a true desire to offer the best possible conditions for people to express themselves through democratic, free, and fair elections. Dear electoral community, on my behalf, on behalf of the Center for Continuous Electoral Training and of the Central Electoral Commission of the Republic of Moldova, allow me to congratulate you on Global Election Day, our professional day, and to wish you all meaningful achievements in your daily work and pride for a job well done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diana, and I hope to meet you in person, because then maybe not ACEEEO members not knowing about the fact that Moldova will take over the presidency of the ACEEEO very soon, and we do hope that the annual ACEEEO conference could be had face-to-face in Chisinau, hopefully in November. But the exact information will come up soon, and we let you all know. And of course, as usual, we invite all our friends and colleagues to our annual conference. Diana, thanks so much again. And let's move to not so far from Chisinau, but back to Bucharest. And now Jean-Paul will speak only on behalf of the Permanent Electoral Authority of Romania. Jean-Paul, please.
Thank you very much, Zsolt. Dear colleagues, once again, I express my sincere gratitude to all the electoral stakeholders together with whom we are celebrating Global Election Day. Thanks to all of you, this celebration is becoming more and more visible every year. While holding the ACEEEO presidency, the PA managed to foster at regional level the promotion of the values that guide our daily work: democracy, equity, transparency, and progress. As a matter of fact, these are the core values that also triggered the recent Romanian IT&C developments in the electoral field. I would like to briefly underline some of the results of which we are proud of. Given that a significant part of the society is shifting towards the online environment, the PA had to constantly adapt its electoral instruments and procedures. Moreover, the youngsters who represents a priority, both the PA and the ACEEEO, are drawn towards new media and technology. Therefore, we had to learn to speak the same language in order to keep up the pace with the new generation of voters. Let me walk us through the main instruments which we have developed during these last years. Firstly, in order to reduce the costs of organizing elections and adopt more paperless procedures, we decided to use tablets in the polling stations. For the polling stations abroad, voters could even sign with stylus on the tablets in order to confirm their identity and they have cast their vote. These tablets were equipped by the PA together with the special telecommunication service with in-house information system. One of the main instruments in is the system for monitoring the turnout and preventing illegal voting. When persons enters a polling station, her ID is scanned with a tablet used by an operator. The system confirms that the identity of the person and the status of her voting rights. Furthermore, it appears on the screen whether the person has already voted or if he or she is listed at another polling station. This process completed within seconds. Moreover, the information is processed and the real-time turnout of the electoral processes is published on a platform of the PA, HTTPC presence.roaeb.ro. In this manner, all the electoral processes are transparent, accountable, and trustworthy. Most of the technological developments were implemented by the PA in order to avoid having crowded polling stations and long queues as it was the case during the Romanian presidential elections of 2019. Thanks to the ITNC system implemented in 2020, the PA managed to ensure that the electoral system remains connected to the needs of today's society: rapidity, efficacy, and high-end technology. The use of tablets was a great success since they also helped the electoral bureaus to avoid any inconsistencies regarding the results, since they allowed for the operators in the polling station to record the counting of the ballots and to capture the photos of the minutes right after the counting process was concluded. Moreover, at the end of the voting day, the photos of the minutes signed by all members of the polling station were transmitted to the central information system, which ensured the rapid publication of the results of the elections. Concerning the security aspects to the entire infrastructure of the system, the PA specialists resorted to implementing a blockchain solution. The PA was a pioneer in this field by using this mechanism in the electoral process. The blockchain solution is one of the safest ways to preserve the security of any transaction. In our case, it offers the highest level of trust in ensuring the integrity of accuracy of the data regarding monitoring the turnout and preventing the illegal voting. Implementing the latest technological developments does not end here. Within the context of COVID-19 pandemic, the specialists within the PA developed a new platform that helps political parties and candidates to collect signatures from their supporters during the electoral period. This platform has been developed using the PA's internal resources, and it was made available to all political parties and candidates. Furthermore, the PA developed new online platforms that were used to register all political parties and candidates for each electoral process held in 2020. The purpose of these new platforms was to create online candidate databases that were used in the distribution of mandates and of the reimbursement of electoral campaign funds. In conclusion, I would like to point out that it is only by constantly enhancing the capacities and improving the mechanism of our institutions that we can keep up the voters' expectation and the evolution of our societies. Let us all remember something on this special day. The world is constantly changing, and there will always be challenges for the electoral administration worldwide. Nevertheless, no matter how hard these challenges may be, our cooperation and willingness to advocate for progress always help us find a way. Sorry. Thank you for your attention and all the best.
Thank you very much, Zsombor. I think
sorry for the time.
No problem. We definitely need another time, for example, to discuss the blockchain issue, that how the blockchain could be used in election as well. So this is again, I put it on my list as well. Thank you, Zsombor. And our next speaker is Mr. Pavel Andreev, who is the member of the Central Election Commission of the Russian Federation. So please, Mr. Andreev, you have the floor.
Your Excellency, President and Secretary General of the Association, ladies and gentlemen, firstly, I would like to extend warm greetings on the occasion of the Global Election Day to all of you from Chair of the Central Election Commission of the Russian Federation, Ms. Ella Pamfilova. It is also a great honor and privilege for me to address the distinguished audience. I believe it's high time the electoral community have had this unique platform to exchange ideas in a TED Talk style manner. Taking into account the allotted time, without further ado, I would get down to my punchline. What is it we as election managing bodies care about most? Essentially, it is the legitimacy of the elections or referendum results. And trust, because it is the trust which to the greatest extent determines whether the results will be deemed legitimate by the society. First and foremost, of course, we care about trust from our voters and the participants of the electoral process. Transparency and careful consideration in decision-making are the keys to it. At the Central Election Commission of the Russian Federation, there is no single decision which is taken behind closed doors. All our sittings are transmitted live, all the protocols and decisions are published on the website and in print, cited in our social media channels as they're being taken. We're striving to make most significant decisions those which are of a dividing character for the political parties or for the society, after careful expert discussions. In the past campaign last year, for example, that happened with the likes of multi-day voting and digital electronic voting. Moreover, bear in mind that according to the law, the composition of the election commissions in Russia presumes that no less than 50% of their members represent political parties. Furthermore, during the campaign, candidates and parties standing for the elections also have the right to assign their representatives to the commissions, thus making the decision-making completely transparent and controlled by the participants of the electoral process. Another means to employ to the benefit of gaining trust is the technology. Unparalleled anywhere in the world, video surveillance of the polling stations, which is available to all participants of the electoral process, candidates or independent observers alike, steady deployment of electronic ballot boxes, etc., all of them contribute to the trust of the voters and candidates in the process. Yet, the technology bears also the other side. What we have discovered over the past campaigns is how easily the advancement of technology, gadgets, social media, digital editing facilities has contributed to evolution of a phenomena detrimental to the cause of trust. That is fake news and fake allegations of infringements, etc. According to independent observers, the number of fake news about the elections has increased tenfold in the past year only, from 2 to 20,000 messages. The techniques also varied from unsubstantiated text messages to videos edited from past years' video surveillance recordings, and even setting up special studio to produce fake reels. We should all be well on alert to monitor these allegations. In the aftermath of the campaign, we have studied almost 5,500 notifications about alleged breaches. Only 9% of those reports proved true. That is, by the way, 5% less than in 2019. 65% of the reports were found not true, whereas 26% contained information which didn't relate to the breaches of the electoral law altogether. In 20 regions, not a single report was found to be true. And most astonishingly, 38 messages from 11 different regions of the Russian Federation were absolutely identical. The latter proves that there appears, I'm quite finishing. The latter proves that there appears to be coordinated efforts coming from the marginal political groups, not mature or popular enough to stand for the elections themselves, or with some other vested interest, to undermine the scrupulous and honest effort of the election officials, ruin trust of the voters and candidates, and erode legitimacy of the elections. I hope the situation is not as serious in your respective countries as we have witnessed in Russia, but even if it isn't, I would like to leave you with this thought. Bear in mind the risk of attempts to undermine trust in what you do, because it is important, it is becoming as important as what you do to build up that very trust. I wish those of you who represent EMBs smooth elections in the months to come, and all of you good health. Thank you for attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Andreev. Of course, I would like to pick up the issue of the social media, which will be a evergreen story, I think, in the coming years. And I would like just you to recall our conference a few years back about the conscious voter. Is the voter still conscious enough, or how we can do our best to let's say to somehow provide the most relevant information to the voters. Thank you very much, Mr. Andreev again. Let's move to our next speaker, who is Mr. Bill Wengren, who is the director of the election committee in the city of Gothenburg in Sweden, and Bill is also the vice president of the Association of the government officials. It's called ACEEEO. Bill, take the floor, please.
Thank you, and happy election day to everyone. And thank you so much for and congratulations to ACEEEO for arranging this fantastic, inspiring conference. It's great to meet colleagues from all over the world, share ideas, even if the speeches from each and every one of us are a little bit short. My name is Bill Wengren. I'm the Vice President of the International Organization of Government Officials, and I'm also senior advisor to the election committee in the city of Gothenburg, which is Sweden's second largest city. I work as a senior advisor there. First, some words about ACEEEO. ACEEEO is an organization that our aim is an international organization, as it says in the name, and we like to look upon ourselves as the leading organization for local officials, fostering excellence in public service through education, innovation, and networking. We do that through industry-specific education. We have an accredited certification program. We study emerging technology trends, principles of ethics in public service, alliances with business partners, legislative awareness, and we also, at our annual conference, which is held every summer, we have the largest trade show in the official business. All members of ACEEEO are required to live up to and abide by the highest ethical principle in the conduct of their affairs as elected official and as members of ACEEEO. We have two different kinds of education and certificate that you can get as an elected or appointed official. We have a certificate in public leadership, specially designed for all public officials elected or appointed and their staff. And this program, certificate in public leadership, is developed and conducted by faculty members of the Pepperdine University in California. We have another more sort of a lower level certificate, which is the certified public officials, which you can get by the internet if you are a member of ACEEEO, and you can also get classes on our annual and our midwinter conference. We have two conferences each year. Most of the time they are always in the United States. Our next conference will be held in June this year. It's an annual conference, and we expect something like 300-400 exportation visitors. And welcome to California in June from ACEEEO. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill. Very, very interesting programs or activities that you have in the ACEEEO. We definitely try to join you, if not in person, at least by in a hybrid format, if it is possible. Thank you again, Bill. And our next speaker is Mrs. Katarina Sharak, who is the head of the Secretariat of the Central Election Commission of Ukraine. Katarina, good to see you after Bucharest. We met in the ACEEEO annual conference, and please take the floor.
Good afternoon, Secretary General. Good day, dear participants of the summit. My name is Katarina Sharak. I am Chief of Secretariat of the Central Election Commission of Ukraine. First, I would like to congratulate all of us on World Election Day. I'm pleased to see colleagues with whom we had a fruitful discussion about elections aimed last September at the annual conference in Bucharest, Romania. I want to thank the association for this chance to meet all of you again. Over the past few years, Ukraine has witnessed significant progress in the area of elections and democratic participation. We still face our own domestic challenges, but the Commission is working hard to develop democratic behavior and build accountable and transparent institutions based on the rule of law and respect for fundamental freedoms and human rights. In particular, the Commission has, for the first time in its history, developed and approved 5-year strategic plan. In this plan, the Commission has identified 6 strategic objectives: institutional capacity, quality and transparency, education, inclusiveness, technological modernization, and cooperation. In particular, in close cooperation with civil society, we made elections more accessible for women, youth, persons with disabilities, less mobile citizens, and internally displaced persons. Among other, Commission works closely with Parliament, other state authorities, civil society, foreign election administration bodies, and international organizations. And we see significant process in this. Speaking about our current agenda, our top priorities are: first is technological modernization, namely with the introduction of the new technologies in the electoral process at all levels of its administration, including electronic services for submitting documents to election commissions, increasing the level of cybersecurity of commission. Last year, we have adopted the conception of the informational and analytic system of commission and go further to its implementation. Second, at the beginning of this year, the Commission decided to establish the Electoral Training Center and approved its regulations. Today, we are making legal frameworks related to the competition for the position of Director of the Center. Therefore, the main goal for the year is launch of the training center, as well as networking, sustainable cooperation, and organization of experience exchange between the center and the similar education institutions of foreign electoral administration bodies. The Commission is actively involved in the revision of the electoral legislation, as well as contributing to a new legislation on political parties and local referendum. We believe that there is a window of opportunity to create a strong legal framework in Ukraine, and we will do our best to cooperate with all stakeholders to achieve this goal. Last but not the least thing that I want to mention, that the 2023 parliamentary election and 2024 presidential election in Ukraine will be held in accordance with the new legislation. So the Commission is working on methodological materials for election commissions and other electoral process participants, finding new opportunities for voter education, creating and implementing training programs and courses for different categories of election organizers to ensure transparent and well-organized elections. So thank you for your attention. On behalf of the Central Election Commission of Ukraine, I would to say that we are very happy to be a part of a global electoral community, and we look forward to future cooperation with the association members based on common values and objectives. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Katarina, and good luck to your lot of initiatives what you have on the table in the Central Election Commission of Ukraine. Thanks so much again. I'm calling now our longtime friend, Mr. Pierre Garone, who is the Secretary of the Council for Democratic Election in the Venice Commission. Pierre, please take the mic and the screen.
Thank you, Zsolt. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to address such a vast community of election experts. This shows that elections are a core aspect of life worldwide. I want in particular to thank ACEEO, with which, as you said, the Venice Commission has cooperated for decades, for the organization of this event, to which a number of our old friends from the European conferences of electoral bodies take part. Those conferences co-organized by the Venice Commission. Elections were faced in recent times with extraordinary challenges linked to the pandemics, but also with ordinary ones. The focus has mainly been on the extraordinary, but we should not forget the ordinary, which can itself be divided between old ordinary and new ordinary. These so-called ordinary problems are indeed partly classical, what I call the old ordinary ones, and partly linked to the new digital environment, represented of the Russian Central Election Commission raised this issue. So this I would call the new ordinary ones. The need for a fundamental rights use of digital technologies in electoral process has raised particular attention from the Council of Europe, the Venice Commission in particular, during the last years. The emphasis has been put in particular on the use of social media for electoral campaigns, including the problems resulting from fake news, disinformation, and misinformation. The Venice Commission analyzed these ordinary challenges in a report adopted in 2020. Challenges remained in relation to the various fundamental principles of electoral law, universal, equal, direct, secret, and free suffrage. Concerning universal suffrage, a tendency could be identified to grant the right to vote in national elections to all citizens where possible, both legally and de facto. The remaining restrictions on the right to vote were increasingly under discussion. Concerning equal suffrage and freedom of voters to form an opinion, the main challenges were the distortion of political competition conditions, especially through misuse of administrative resources and unbalanced coverage in the media, negative campaigning, and what is new and fundamental, the inadaptation of legislation to the digital environment. Freedom of voters to express their votes and free suffrage continued to be challenged from time to time by irregularities in the voting process, as well and more in the counting and tabulation of results. This also entailed anybody being able to lodge complaints and appeals in the case of electoral irregularity, and these are followed up effectively, these complaints and appeals. This should not lead us to forget the present extraordinary circumstances with which we all had and still have to struggle. I would in particular praise the electoral management bodies for the innovative solutions they found in a really short time. The Venice Commission was also very active in the field, although under less concrete pressure. It concluded as follows, and I quote, where emergency measures are rule of law compliant, they will have built-in guarantees against abuse, specifically with regard to the principle of proportionality under its various aspects. This principle is key, particularly in the electoral field, where the impact of any postponement of elections must be balanced with the risks for free and universal suffrage arising from holding them during an emergency situation. Respect for this principle, proportionality, must be subject to effective non-partisan parliamentary scrutiny and to meaningful judicial review by independent courts at a national and European level. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Pierre. And of course, the Venice Commission is remained always a compass for all of us when we are speaking about the constitutional issues of election. And we have many thanks to you also examining or assessing the new challenges of the election system, like the new digital phenomena, as you mentioned. Thank you again, Pierre. And now I'm just passing the floor to only about 2 kilometers from the ACEEEO office here in Budapest to the National Election Office of Hungary, and I'm calling the chair of the office, Mr. Attila Nagy. Attila, please take over the mic and screen.
Thank you, dear Mr. Chairman. Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, it's an honor to be here. I greet all of you warmly. In the following minutes, I'd like to summarize you the challenges of the upcoming elections in Hungary. In exactly 2 months, on the 3rd of April 2022, the Hungarian election administration system will face a new challenge. For the first time in Hungary, parliamentary elections and national referendums will be held on the same day. Voters will be able to express their opinion on 4 questions in the referendums beside the parliamentary elections. the so-called common procedure inevitably entails an increase in the administrative burden for the election offices responsible for the preparation and organization of the elections. At the same time, voters will experience the increased number of tasks primarily through the work of the ballot counting committees in the polling stations, not through the work of the election offices. Voting may take longer, as the register of voters will have to be signed in more places. More ballot papers will have to be picked up and filled in, and the counting of votes will take longer at the end of the day. I should also point out that voting will take place in more than 10,000 polling stations in all municipalities of Hungary, as well as in nearly 150 foreign representations. The work of the professionals involved in the organization of this exercise is not made any easier by the fact that is taking place against the background of an ever-changing and difficult to predict intensity of the epidemic. As the Hungarian legislation will allow some voters to cast their votes at Hungarian embassies and consulates abroad, and others to do so by post, it will not only be important how the epidemic situation develops in Hungary, but also what the conditions and possible restrictions are around the world. Therefore, voters are reminded that local pandemic regulations may affect or even prevent the holding of a vote at a foreign representation, and that local pandemic rules must be respected in all cases. And on the other hand, this year, we are also introducing an IT innovation for the vote count. The ACEEEO Hungary, under the supervision of the National Election Commission, on the basis of its decision taken by unanimous vote, will be able to count the votes cast in the national referendum by post using two independent IT applications. In the interests of transparency, the ACEEEO Hungary shall provide access to the log files of the vote recognition IT applications to all the parties and organizations who delegated members to the National Election Commission, which shall contain how the algorithms have classified a vote for a given ballot paper and a given question. And I have to tell you that we are prepared and eager to use these applications. Thank you for your kind attention.
Yeah, thank you very much, Attila. And of course, I'll be wishing you all successes. We can definitely, even from the voters' point of view in Hungary, and let's take myself as a voter of Hungary, then it will be definitely a new situation when we at the same time we have to vote for the parliament as well, so one ballot paper, and also for a national referendum as well, even for 4 questions, not only for one. So we definitely have to be prepared as well, not only the electoral administration, but also the voters as well. Thank you again, Attila, and good luck for the election. Dear colleagues, thank you for respecting the time. There is a new rule in the pandemic area that after 2 hours the moderator has to take some rest. Now, after 2 hours moderation, though, I have to take some rest, but I come back to the end, of course. But now I would like to pass the moderation to our longtime friend Richard Sudriet, who is an honorary member of the ACEEEO and the founding president of IFS. Richard, we are all in your hand now. Please take it over.
Thank you very much, Zsolt, and my congratulations to you and the staff, and also all the members of ACEEEO for this great celebration of Global Election Day. It's not only a celebration of elections, but a celebration of democracy. And as we all know, you can't have democracy without free and fair elections. And so what is being discussed here today is extremely important. We've heard from different areas of the world where exciting initiatives are being undertaken. For example, in the area of professionalization, training programs, the importance of transparency. So at this time, it's my pleasure to moderate the session for the Americas. And we are very pleased to have a very distinguished panel of folks who will be sharing their interventions, and they have all promised that they will try to keep them within the 4-minute limit. Otherwise, we'll get dinged by the ACEEO time clock. But I think just before we go into the first presentation, I just want to say, as we have seen over the course of the last 2 years, election administrators are very resilient people. Oftentimes they're faced with challenges such as how to organize an election in the times of a pandemic, in times of natural disaster, and also at times when they personally can become the subject of violence and intimidation. So we all join in saluting all the election administrators for the contributions that you are making to democracy. We couldn't do it without you. So with that, I'm going to have the opportunity to introduce our distinguished panel. I'll do it one by who will, as they will be doing their presentations. From Canada, our first speaker is a gentleman who I worked with for many years at IFAS, and he's done a terrific job in Canada. He's presently the Chief Electoral Officer for the province of Saskatchewan, and it's my pleasure at this time to introduce Dr. Michael Boda. Michael?
Well, thank you, Richard. It is a genuine pleasure to be part of this panel today and to join you in celebrating not only elections as a cornerstone of democracy, but to acknowledge the integral role that those who are involved in administering elections play in making democracy work. I do also want to congratulate ACEEO on its important anniversary this year. Knowing this had me thinking to the very beginnings of the ACEEO, when I was privileged to work with IFAS to support this new organization, not knowing what a great impact it would have over the decades. I think in those days, election administrators were extremely focused on what I would call the technical side of elections. Their focus was principally on building approaches to voter education, on determining better ways to deliver ballots and ballot boxes. And they were even thinking about ways that technology could make our processes more effective. Rightly, many election administrators believe strongly that if we could just implement better elections from a technical perspective, that elections in our democracies would do so much better. Now, about 25 years on, I would say that the importance of getting it right on the technical side is no less important. I oversee an election management body in Canada, as Richard indicated, that's very much pursuing this goal. As we move toward a general election in 2024, we're building a brand new election management system that will allow election administrators to manage voters and workers and political stakeholders from registration all the way through to election results. We're also focused on modernizing the way that we serve voters, and we will introduce in 2024 electronic poll books across our jurisdiction and ballot tabulators that will facilitate and speed our counts. In fact, we are very excited about these new developments. But I also want to acknowledge that we have entered into a new phase for election administration, a phase in which focusing alone on improving elections from a technical standpoint is no longer going to cut it. It is increasingly important that we fully understand our need to step outside of the political process, to take on a very different and nonpartisan role in order to serve our voters equally and to serve our voters equally and also to become a central component. It has to become a central component of what we do. We need not just understand the rules of the game, but we also need to understand how to effectively communicate and enforce those rules before, during, and after an electoral event. If there's one thing I want to leave you with today, it's that increasingly we need to focus toward the soft side of election administration, to diplomacy and to being effective arbiters in ways that we had never envisioned before. I feel privileged to be here today. I've had the privilege of working for a long time with Richard Sudriet, with Paul Di Gregorio, with Manuel Carri Pableno, and having observed them at work over the decades, I know they're strongly committed to the values that are foundational to moving in this very different direction: professionalism, impartiality, service, accountability, and innovation. It's also great to be here with Tony Banbury and others who had organizations, knowing that IFES remains in good hands, and you are continuing to express these values to election administrators around the globe. So moving forward, I hope that we can think about these things, and thank you for having me here today.
Thank you very much, Michael. And I want to thank you in particular for putting a couple new challenges to election administrators on the table in terms of really focusing more attention on the diplomacy side of election administration, as well as the role as an effective arbiter. So thank you for that. I had the opportunity and the honor to serve as the first president of IFES. And so today I'm especially honored to have the opportunity to present to you the current president of IFES, who is doing a fantastic job, Anthony Banbury. Take it away, Anthony.
Thank you very much, Richard, and greetings to everyone. Richard's legacy as the founding president of IFES remains very influential on the organization. Just 1 hour ago, I had a board member in my office here in Washington who, apropos of a very different context, raised Richard and his contributions and was talking about something they had done together. So Richard, your legacy is alive, well, and strong here, and we all benefit from everything you did to build the organization. Mr. President, Secretary General Zalaki, members of the ACEEO, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, it really is a pleasure to be with all of you, even in this virtual environment today, celebrating Global Elections Day. And Richard, I want to thank you for moderating this session. Over IFES's 3-decade partnership, which was started by Richard, partnership with ACEEO to promote transparent and professional election administration in Europe and beyond, we have seen so many challenges to democratic elections, and all of you here today have been on the front lines of addressing those challenges. We've also seen those challenges evolve in ways that Michael has just been describing. IFES has been working to share with European electoral leadership and spread local expertise while advancing the ideas and values of ACEEO. I'm very pleased, honored, in fact, to share with you that one of ACEEO's honorary members and a former chair of the Central Election Commission of Georgia, Ms. Tamar Zvanya, is now an IFES country director working or leading our programming in Uzbekistan. And IFES now works with 8 members, 8 electoral management bodies from members of ACEEO. And we really deeply value those partnerships and the ability to learn from our partners and also hopefully contribute to the great work that you are doing. I also want to take this opportunity to say that my colleagues in IFES and I stand very much with our friends and partners in Ukraine. IFES has a long and fruitful presence in Ukraine to support the commitment by its government and people for a democratic society based on openness, self-determination, rule of law, and we look forward to continuing that partnership. Ukraine, though, like many countries around the world, is facing various threats to democracy, including foreign interference, virulent spread of misinformation and hate speech, weaponized technology, cyber attacks, much more. And I know all the electoral officials here have to deal with a combination of these kinds of threats to democracy and electoral integrity on a daily basis. And the challenges and threats are evolving, as Michael was saying. So what should we do about it? I am heartened by the strong ongoing support by democratic governments from around the world for our common work in fighting corruption, bolstering democratic reformers, advancing technology for democracy, and of course, defending free and fair elections. At the US Summit for Democracy in December, leaders from around the world expressed their unwavering commitment to democracy and to its foundation of free and fair elections. President Biden called the defense of democracy the defining challenge of our time. And it's so heartening to see political leaders at the highest levels from countries around the world put this kind of priority on democracy and elections. The commitments made at the Summit for Democracy align strongly with important work of ACEEO and IFES. This includes better safeguarding of elections from internal and external threats, leveraging technology to counter disinformation and cyber attacks, and to promote electoral integrity. IFES is working very hard to strengthen our tools, our internal capabilities to understand the threats that electoral management bodies are facing and to build new tools and programming approaches to help EMBs counter those threats and strengthen their contribution to electoral integrity. Just in the past couple of years, we have developed new program capacity in cyber defenses, countering misinformation and hate speech, expanding access for youth, minorities, refugees, displaced peoples, making good use of data analytics, using new tools and approaches for training and learning, and much more. We also opened a Center for Anti-Corruption and Democratic Trust to address the direct threat posed by corruption to electoral processes. Of course, democracy will gain no ground if it provides no results. Democracies must deliver for all their people. Democracies must embrace effective policies that ensure inclusion and promote equality. Democracy thrives on diversity and a plurality of viewpoints and backgrounds. And this is why IFES's mission is Together We Build Democracies That Deliver for All. Democracy is for the people, but it also must be by the people. Democracy and elections depend on the active participation of citizens as voters, political contestants, reporters, and of course, electoral officials. Continuous investment is needed in young people through civic and voter education so that the next generation can play their role as responsible and engaged citizens. I am very grateful to all of you, this community of practice represented here today, for what you are doing for this cause. Your dedication and hard work every day, including often in the face of great challenges, gives me optimism about the future and that democracy will continue to provide the people in the Americas and around the world with the best opportunity to live happy, healthy, fulfilling, and peaceful lives. So I want to end just by expressing my great admiration, respect, and appreciation for the work of electoral officials represented here today in the EMBs from around the world. You are an inspiration to the citizens of your country and to all my colleagues at IFES. Thank you for your work. And Richard, thank you again for everything you're doing in your current work and what you did here at IFES. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. I really appreciate your thoughtful presentation. And I want to congratulate you on the excellent leadership that you're providing to IFES. Speaking at leadership, it's my opportunity and honor now to present a gentleman who represents one of the best election management bodies worldwide. And I've had an opportunity to see many of them close up. The National Electoral Institute of Mexico. It has more than 30 years of experience. And in fact, when IFAS began its work, it was roughly about the same time that the INE began. We're fortunate today to have its president, Lorenzo Cordoba, who is also a person that I think, especially in this past year, 2021, under his leadership, Mexico experienced and organized the largest elections in the history of Mexico, and all of this done in spite of the pandemic, and also a person who really demonstrated great courage in the face of personal threats. So we admire the work you're doing. Adelante, Señor Presidente.
Thank you so much, Richard. Let me start by thanking the organizers for this invitation. Many thanks to the Association of European Election Officials, and particularly to Sombor Vaida, President of ACEEO, and Sol Solnocki, Secretary General of the Association. My greetings also to Richard Sudriet, our dear friend, moderator of this panel and friend of all, and ally of the National Electoral Institute of Mexico. I'm honored and humbled to be invited to this year's celebration of the Global Election Day. This celebration, which gathered not only EMBs, but also key stakeholders in the ACEEO region, has become a real tradition and a key date in the calendar for EMBs around the world to remind us the significance of elections as a fundamental feature of any form of government that calls itself a democracy. As you all know, democracy is not enjoying its best moment in recent years. There is a social discontent with democracy, which is strongly correlated with the lack of results in addressing the greatest problems of our time, or what the Italian politician theorist Norberto Bobbio called the unfulfilled promises of democracy. These unaccomplished promises that overwhelm our democracies include increasing poverty, oceanic inequality, corruption, impunity, and violence in some cases. To this lack of results in our democracy, we should also add the institutional backsliding of credibility crisis that has been affecting for too long two of the core institutions of our democracy, that is, political parties on one hand and parliaments on the other hand. At the same time, disinformation and fake news have deeply affected the state of our democracies. It's not that lying did not exist before in politics. We know it has been around for centuries, but the reach and speed of dissemination introduced by social media and internet accessibility has made these digital tools especially disruptive for democracy. Other challenges of our current times has been particularly unsettling. One of them is increasing polarization within societies, heightened by growing intolerance. And the other one is the COVID-19 pandemic, which in many respects has deepened autocratic tendencies that existed before the outbreak of the pandemic itself. In this problematic context, many EMBs around the world have been experienced even more challenges. I'm referring to the attacks and harassment that has affected all too many electoral national institutions. Attacks to EMBs from political actors is not new. It could be seen as part of the intensity of a lively democracy, especially when it comes from those who lose elections. What is new, very worrisome, is that these current attacks come in many cases from the leaders in power, from the governmental circuits, from those who have won in a democratic electoral process and benefit from them. It is particularly disturbing that these attacks have in some cases reached the level of threatening the personal integrity of public officials in charge of EMBs, and has happened in Peru, and also in Mexico. We'll also may mention unusual budget cuts that compromises in many cases EMB's technical capacities and responsibilities they hold, or the menaces of electoral reforms aimed to increase governmental controls over independent or autonomous electoral commissions. In this context, our democracies need more than ever the firm commitment of EMBs with fair and free elections and with the defense of democracies. Of course, the National Electoral Institute of Mexico remains committed to democracy and will keep working hard to make elections free, fair, competitive, impartial, and organized with all the professionalism that characterized the Mexican EMBs since its birth. Once again, many thanks for this invitation, and I join my voice and that of the INE with all of you to celebrate the elections today as a fundamental citizen tool to deepen democracy in the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lorenzo, for your call to defend democracy. I think your words are very, very well taken, and we should all consider them carefully. We now will also hear from a colleague of Lorenzo's, someone that you all know well, Mexico's electoral ambassador to the world, who's worked for over 30 years as head of the international division at INE, Manuel Carrillo. Manuel, adelante.
Thank you very much, Richard. Have a nice day, all friends and colleagues. Congratulations for the Global Elections Day and the leadership of the ACEEO. It's a very good initiative that we want to support. Allow me explain my intervention is about the Summit for Democracy, the role of the EMBs in strengthening democracy. Next. Currently, next is one, please. Next. Okay, I am not, it's not working, but allow me explain this idea. Currently, there is a wide consensus that democracy around the world is going through very complex times and is facing multiple risks. We, international organizations and electoral authorities from different parts of the world, have come together to call for a comprehensive and global reflection process on the problems of democracy to generate initiatives in an action plan to tackle them. Unlike the democratization process that developed through the last third of the previous century, which was encouraged and supported by a wide set of social institutions and forces, the current issue has not gathered efforts or produced agreements for its defense and preservation. Democracy is questioned in terms of its capability to govern over the contemporary society. The weakness of the rule of law entails serious consequences: economic inequality, wrong distribution of wealth, violence, health, weak environment protection, inclusion, justice delivery, among others. Criticisms against democracy are affecting the credibility of electoral processes. Interest is lost in election because the citizens see that instead of their problems and needs being solved, they grow bigger. This situation is worsened by the strides made by authoritarian and populist discourses and practices. They promise effectiveness and exchange for liberties. Hence, the Summit for Democracy, the role of the electoral management bodies in its strengthening aims to start a movement for improving their performance in the electoral field. We, Democrats, are looking for solutions while preserving the liberties. It is an intellectual, cultural, and moral challenges. The convening organization, which wish to jointly and in solidarity work in this drive to strengthen democracy. Nowadays, there are associations of the electoral management body in all 5 continents. On these grounds, the proposal is to organize 5 regional meetings between July and August 2022, in addition to a global summit to be held in September this year. We are experiencing a change of age. The technological modernization of the last 20 years, the COVID, the new world geopolitics, and others are significantly affecting political and social behaviors. Democracy must adapt to the new social, political, and cultural dynamics. The Summit of Democracy movement is a starting point to work in its systematic improving during at least the following 3 years. Only us, we can do it. Finally, there is a pandemic that is worse than the one of the COVID, and that is indifference. In this regard, the Austrian philosopher Karl Popper noted that democracy cannot be better than Democrats. It's Democrats who must work to improve it. It is absurd to complain about democracy. The answer to those kinds of complaints is asking, what have you done to improve democracy? That's all, my friends, and in the short time, we will send invitation to participate in this humanistic and collective effort for democracy. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Manuel, for a fascinating initiative, and I know we all look forward to learning more about it and also how we can engage to help support it, because this is a time when it's very important to show solidarity and unity for everybody that believes and supports democracy. Now we will turn to our next speaker, who is going to be representing the Association for South American Electoral Officials, which is also known as the Protocol of Quito. We're pleased to have with us Ricardo Blanco Herrera, who is a judge from the Electoral Court of Chile, and who I had the opportunity to meet at the AWEB meeting in 2015. So, Magistrado, por favor, adelante.
First of all, I want to give an affectionate greeting to all. The topic developed is the importance of the electoral bodies. Ladies and gentlemen, in Chile, the electoral activity is divided. We have the administrative instance in charge of the electoral service, who has the competences of all logistics and the electoral processes. And we have also the jurisdictional instance, in this case, in charge of the electoral justice divided in regional courts and the elections qualifying court, Tribunal Calificador de Elecciones. The national organ with constitutional category, autonomous, independent of the other powers of the state, and integrated by Minister of the Supreme Court of Justice, and one citizen who was part and member of the legislative power. The importance of the electoral organism with jurisdictional character in charge of qualifying the validity or nullity of an election for president of the Chilean Republic as other popular election of authorities, it remains in his political independence, in the transparency, legality, and the certainty in the resolution of the electoral conflicts, in the probity, opportunity, efficiency, and effectiveness will play his role, the capacity to adapt to new technologies and contribute to the civic formation and enjoyment of the prestige and credibility of all the citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that interesting presentation. And we all recognize the great contributions that Chile has been making in the field of election administration and electoral justice. So thank you for that. We now will turn to another regional organization in Latin America. It is the Association of Central American Election Officials, which is known as the Protocolo of Tikal. And that it's interesting because that organization actually served as a model for ACEEO when it was first created back in 1991. So there's a very strong linkage between both organizations. Representing the Protocol of Tikal is Gabriel Aguilera, who is a judge for the Supreme Electoral Tribunal of Guatemala. Adelante, magistrado.
Thank you very much. First of all, it is an honor addressing this prestigious audience on behalf of my fellow colleagues of the electoral organizations of the Tikal Protocol. Referring to the importance of electoral bodies, without a doubt, electoral bodies are the fundamental pillar of democracy in our region. Our region suffered different types of political conflicts before establishing democracy as a way to access power on behalf of our citizens. The electoral bodies are key actors in the enforcement of the principle of popular sovereignty, which means that the source of power in an open society falls on the citizens, who, through the mechanism of representation, delegate that power to their representatives through electoral processes. Hence, the extreme importance of the transparency and veracity of the electoral processes and of the electoral bodies that seek to generate the confidence of the electorate and the political parties in the electoral process. Our electoral organizations are now in a position to guarantee the certainty of the electoral register, its transparency, and during the day of the elections, the legitimacy of each vote and the veracity of the electoral results. In representative democracies, the mechanism for selecting representative is mainly through political parties. However, it should be remembered that politics, being essentially a space for power disputes, requires that the functioning of parties and electoral mechanism guarantee that the transfer of the citizens' will is fully achieved. It is then up to the electoral organizations to implement the legal framework and the institutions that assume the function of supervising the actions of the political parties, the correct development of the elections, and the education and training of citizens so that they understand and make good use of their rights. For any electoral body to be credible and effective, it must have sufficient and timely funds, as well as impartial and independent human resources. The administration of democratic elections requires that electoral bodies are seen as impartial, independent of government or other influence. The Tikal Protocol has visibly contributed to the political processes of democratization in Central America and the Caribbean, and has developed a significant increase in the training of mid-level managers and electoral officials, generating specialized knowledge in the electoral technical field. This contributes to the confidence of the electorate. Publicity and transparency are the fundamental pillars of the action of the electoral bodies to generate the trust of the population. Although we have made a lot of progress as electoral organizations, the hard work continues to implement inclusive policies with the aim of reaching vulnerable groups and promoting their political participation, emphasizing in gender equality. The modernization of electoral bodies is a key tool to approach youth and citizens in general by promoting political participation. However, the use of new software comes with proper security measures to prevent any hacking, cyber attacks, or system malfunctions. We have many challenges ahead. The most important thing is to obtain and preserve the legitimacy of the electoral authorities. The people who make up this authority must be prepared, be impartial, and not have ties to political parties so that their decisions, apart from legal certainty, have moral weight. Thank you very much for your attention, and congratulations to all for this International Elections Days.
Muchas gracias, magistrado. We appreciate your comments and your overview of the association. Now it's a pleasure to have an opportunity to introduce another person who has been a longtime friend and colleague from Latin America. He is here today wearing his hat as the Secretary General for the Union of Inter-American Election Authorities, which is the umbrella organization of all the electoral authorities throughout the Americas. So it's my pleasure to have this at this time to introduce Jose Thompson, who is the Executive Director of the Inter-American Institute for Human Rights, which is based in San Jose, Costa Rica. Go ahead, Jose. Gracias.
Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on the time zone. I am Jose Thompson, and acting today as the Secretary of the Electoral Associations of Electoral Organizations in the region. I would like to start by thanking the organizers, especially the ACEEO, for this activity and for underscoring the importance of elections throughout the world. And we at CAPEL serve as the Executive Secretariat of 3 associations, the 2 that have been mentioned, the Quito Protocol and the Tikal Protocol. And I'm going to start sharing screen. Hopefully it will go well, just to let you know how this process started. Is it shown? Is it showing right? Okay, excellent. So as you can see, the characteristics of the Latin American model of electoral organization explains why it was in this part of the world that the associations of electoral institutions were created. And that's because we have a common language deriving from the structure of the institutions in the Americas, especially in Latin America. And that means that all of them are autonomous, permanent, and specialized. And that served as the basis for the creation of the very first associations of electoral bodies in the world. That you can see, the very first one was the Tikal Protocol in 1985. Many accomplishments can be seen as the result of these associations, but I've chosen the record on international electoral observation because it's very impressive. We've conducted a total of 339 missions, and you can see the distribution by different countries covering from Mexico all the way down to Chile. And that's important not only because of the observation itself, but because the observation is also the basis to determine possibilities for technical cooperation. And in this sense, there are hundreds of projects that have emerged as a result of this exchange of views through the conferences and the observation missions. That's why we call this a two-way street. It's not only to provide recommendations to strengthen the host country's electoral system, but also taking away lessons learned in legislations, practices that can be considered when dealing with the respective problems in the national agenda. And finally, as for the challenges in the foreseeable future, we are very proud of the work of the associations, especially because it's also a space for institutional solidarity, which is very much needed in these times. And of course, the most relevant challenge is to continue to technically perform at their best as electoral bodies, but also somber threats lie on the horizon. As national powers forget about, in this regard, checks and balances and try to influence, dominate, or replace electoral institutions. It's not happening in the same way everywhere, but it's a worrisome trend that we are, as part of the associations, trying to preserve the integrity of the different members of the associations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jose, for an excellent overview to Uniore and also for the putting into context the historical background of the development of the regional associations in Latin America. Latin America, without question, has been a pioneer in the area of promoting the idea of regional networks and associations, and we salute the work that you and all the others have been doing. Now we're going to move northward to St. Louis County, which is the place that Paul DiGregorio, of course, lives. And we're going to have the chief electoral officer who oversees and makes sure that Paul does everything correctly, which he always does. Eric Fay, who is the director of elections. And it'll be fascinating because to hear the perspective of the challenges from an administrator who is actively engaged and working in the United States. So Eric, please go ahead.
Well, thank you very much. It's really an honor to be here today. I've enjoyed listening to everybody today. I've observed elections in a number of the countries of the presenters. And so hopefully once COVID subsides, we can get back to doing that a little bit more often. I'm going to try to share my screen here. We're stuck at home in a snowstorm in St. Louis, but I try to throw together a few slides. So hopefully you can see that there. So in 2021 in St. Louis County, we won an award from our National Association of Election Officials for transitioning to a vote anywhere experience. And that was really in response to the pandemic in 2020. So that's Missouri in the middle of the United States. St. Louis County is at the confluence of the Missouri-Mississippi rivers on the eastern side of Missouri. We have about 1 million people in St. Louis County, a little over 300 polling places, over 1,400 precincts. And I bring this up because we have this really confusing spaghetti web of jurisdictions in St. Louis County. And as many of you know, in the United States, we don't have really a national election management body. Elections are administered at the state and really local level. And so we have to administer all state, federal, and local elections at the county level. So you see here all these competing jurisdictions and representative districts and so on. So it makes it really complicated. Those of you who have observed elections in the United States know that this is a typical ballot for an American voter in many places where there's 30, 40, 50 things for the voter to vote on election day. And every voter within our jurisdiction in St. Louis County receives a different variation of this ballot. So it's a challenge making sure voters receive the correct ballot on election day. So we went to the system of printing ballots on demand for each voter as they enter the polling station. So the voter checks in on an electronic poll book. Go to this next slide. They receive this receipt that you see on the right-hand side of your screen, which has a barcode. The poll worker then scans that barcode with this device, which then prints the correct ballot for the voter. And so moving into 2020, we have this system where the ballots are printed on demand, but then we run into the pandemic and we start having polling stations, the owners of these buildings where we hold elections, calling us and saying, we don't want you to have the election here because of the pandemic. So we had to rapidly transition to find new polling stations. In some cases we couldn't. So we went to a model to let people vote at any polling station. So we built a website where a voter could put an address in, see how long the line was at any given polling station, and choose which polling station to go to on election day, one with hopefully the shortest line. So it increased flexibility for us and the voters. And that was really, again, a pandemic response. But what also changed for us drastically was the amount of voting by mail, postal voting. You see on that timeline there in St. Louis County, usually only about 10% of our voters voted by mail or postal voting. Then in 2020, once the pandemic came into full effect, we had over 40% of our voters voting by mail. And you see, it just felt like the mail never stopped. There's huge pallets of ballots in our warehouse getting ready to be mailed out. So we also initiated a ballot tracking device for our voters, where there's a removable stub at the bottom of each postal ballot. The voter could remove it, go to our website, put in a tracking number, and see where their ballot was, if it was mailed, if we had received it, so on and so forth. So that's the quick presentation there. I just want to, again, thank everybody for having us and having a local election official on here, because those are the folks who really do run elections in the United States, for better or worse. And I, again, really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eric, for an exciting presentation, and very interesting to see what you're doing and how you're applying technology to improve the electoral process. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, who is David Levine. He's the Election Integrity Fellow at the Alliance for Securing Democracy, which is part of the German Marshall Fund to the United States. So David, please go ahead.
Thank you, Richard. Let me first say thank you to the ACEEO for organizing this Global Elections Day 2022 Summit and for all of its terrific work, as well as a thank you to those of you who are helping to uphold the conduct of free and fair elections. As Richard noted, I'm David Levine, and I'm the Elections Integrity Fellow at the Alliance for Securing Democracy. And our aim is to raise the cost on autocratic efforts to undermine and interfere in democratic institutions, including elections. And before this role, I served as a state and local election administrator, much like Eric and Paul, and observed elections for the OSCE. I want to take just a couple minutes here to talk about a paper that me and a colleague from the Carter Center, Avery Davis Roberts, will have out in the next few weeks. Despite being called the most secure election ever conducted in the US, confidence in the 2020 presidential election results remains strongly divided along partisan lines. And frankly, adversaries continue to find fertile ground for their efforts. Right? Deficient and potentially dangerous post-election reviews of the 2020 election have exposed sensitive information about election equipment or data. Leaks of sensitive election technology by rogue administrators have made election infrastructure more vulnerable. And frankly, experienced election officials are resigning en masse in response to violent threats. Given this barrage of threats to elections, more robust election observation efforts, particularly nonpartisan observation, could be critical to helping ensure the integrity of future US elections, as well as, frankly, elections around the world. As many of you know, not only could such efforts provide a greater opportunity for the public to learn directly about the election process and have greater faith that the elections are free and fair, it could also help check bad faith actors actively seeking to undermine confidence in democratic elections through improper actions or baseless assertions about election rigging and malfeasance. In addition, nonpartisan observation can provide important information to those on the front lines of elections, of course, as they strive to continuously improve their election processes. As many of you have touched on, right, due in part to unforeseen pandemic conditions, right, there was, here at least in the US, broad agreement among domestic and international experts that while the 2020 US election results were legitimate, that there was not sufficient observation. And as I mentioned, over the next few weeks, right, me and my colleague at the Carter Center will be publishing a paper that provides a roadmap for ways to help rectify this issue for future US elections in a manner that can hopefully help improve the integrity of elections at a time when the US faces growing anti-democratic threats, both within and outside its borders. And in addition to sort of reiterating best practices for nonpartisan observation, particularly in light of the pandemic, this paper will hopefully outline some good practices that balance equal and robust observer access to election processes with the responsibilities of observers to provide accurate assessments of the election. And admittedly, while this paper is intended primarily for US elections, I believe and am hopeful that this paper will have a number of relevant lessons for other countries as well, right, including many of the countries represented here at today's summit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think you really made a very good point about the threats that are faced not only in the US by election administrators and the very system of democracy, but in many other countries around the world. So thank you, David. Now we will turn our attention to our next speaker, who will kind of continue, I think, on this same topic. And I'm pleased at this time to present to you Tammy Patrick, who is a senior advisor to the Democracy Fund in the United States. Tammy, thank you so much for your participation.
Well, thank you so much for inclusion in this important event today. Although we're just a few weeks away from the start of the 2022 primary elections, election officials here in the United States are still dealing with the aftermath of the 2020 presidential election. And I always want to start off with being very, very clear, because I think it's important to lead with the truth and with the facts. And so we know that despite immense pressure with all of the COVID challenges, we know that election officials, government officials, and election cybersecurity experts successfully prepared for and executed the 2020 election. We've heard and we know that it was the most secure in our country's history, but we also know that it was the most transparent, it was the most observed, the most litigated, the most audited election, with more voters voting in this country than ever before, all in the midst of a global pandemic. We also know that election officials conducting audits found no widespread fraud. Our FBI found no widespread fraud. DOJ found no widespread fraud. Our courts found no widespread fraud. But yet we're at a critical juncture because we have anti-democratic forces that have truly gained traction in the United States and are undermining democratic norms that we maybe have taken for granted, that those who fall short in an election will in fact concede, that those who lose or have concerns about the legitimacy of the election will have their day in court, but that they have to provide facts and evidence in order to further their narrative. And also that once a lie or misinformation has been debunked, that it will fade away rather than gain oxygen. But unfortunately, none of that activity drives a political base to stay, as I often say, engaged, enraged, and donating. So what we're experiencing because of all of this are truly attempts to sabotage our democratic process. It's continuing the fueling these conspiracy theories in challenging the legitimacy of the 2020 election. And that narrative is being used to pass restrictive voting laws. Last year, the National Conference of State Legislatures said that there's more than 3,400 pieces of legislation around election administration that was introduced in this country. It's being used to allow for unprecedented access to ballots, official ballots, and voting equipment by partisan amateurs like we saw in Arizona, in my former jurisdiction of Maricopa County. And in some states, that legislation is also allowing the overturning of results of free and fair elections by a state legislature if they do not like the results. It's deeply troubling. This environment has also resulted in the targeting of election officials, and the spectrum ranges from bullying to terrorizing them and their families with death threats. And this is having a result. It's driving election professionals from the field. In the state or Commonwealth of Pennsylvania alone, a third of their local election officials have left office, which results in a loss of institutional knowledge and a vacuum that can be filled with more partisan actors who will potentially set aside their responsibilities under political pressure, which, as we are learning in the news every day, more and more of that pressure was applied in 2020 than I think some of us realized. So the fragility of our democracy has really been exposed, and there are forces at play to exploit those vulnerabilities. So in the United States, we purport to have a government, as was mentioned earlier, by the people, of the people, for the people. Yet we sometimes are forgetting that last piece about for the people. And it's up to the voters to deliver on the first two elements, the by the people and of the people, and put people in office who intend to govern and represent all the voters in their district, and to truly be strong enough to say into the microphone what they're saying off of it. Because what we know in this moment is that many elected people are in fact saying things off record than what will admit to on the record. So at this point, just to wrap up, we've yet to really fulfill on the promise of what an inclusive democracy looks like in America, and it's going to take commitments and the truth from all of us. So we're hopeful that the 2022 election cycle will in fact be peaceful, that citizens will be able to make their voices heard, and that candidates will be civil in both victory and defeat. So thank you again for inclusion today.
Thank you so much, Tammy, for your excellent presentation on the challenges faced by election administrators and the challenge faced by democracy itself by people who don't want to play by the rules. So, and now I'd like to close with our last, but certainly not least, our final speaker, Paul DiGregorio. Paul is well known to all of you. He and I had worked together when he was Executive Vice President at IFAS. He served as a member and as a chairman of the very first Election Assistance Commission in the United States. And so a man with lots of credentials. Paul, take it away.
Thank you, Richard. Richard and I go back, and it was Richard Sudirat who started my career in international elections in 1993, and I'm forever grateful to him for that. It's an honor to have been associated with ACEEO since 1995 and to participate in this important event. It's a larger honor, actually, to be the last speaker on today's program and to be able to follow so many excellent speakers and so many people that I have known for many years. This has been a monumental forum, and collectively and individually, today's speakers represent the best of the best in the field of democracy and elections worldwide. Our first speaker, the ACEEO president from Romania, spoke how we are the pillars of democracy and that we must remain true to our values. As the last speaker, I echo his remarks. During the timeline of the past 30 years of the existence of ACEEO, there have been many challenges. In the first decade, it was the challenges faced by new and emerging democracies. The middle decade was one of growth, professionalism, and the emergence of civil society actors and new international and domestic organizations designed to help improve the election process and participation. In this past decade, and indeed the past 5 years, election officials and organizations promoting democratic values have never been so severely challenged. We are indeed at a crossroads, and it is more important than ever that all of us celebrating this day strengthen this pillar and stay true to our values to strengthen democracy in our world and certainly in our own country. Today in the United States, democracy is being shaken to its core. And I know that other countries are experiencing similar challenges. Sadly, trust in elections is at an all-time low, and false information continues to spread wildly, as my good friend Tammy Patrick just observed. The United States has gone through challenges in the past, and I firmly believe we will weather this storm, although it will not be easy. I want to express my appreciation that those of you from around the globe who continue to support election officials in the United States, and I remind you of the words of US President Abraham Lincoln that Tammy just made reference to, who, when Abraham Lincoln was facing a civil war, stated in a famous address to the American people that the sacrifices of those who stood for liberty, freedom, and democracy will not be in vain, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from this earth. Thank you again for this opportunity. I again congratulate ACEEO on this successful event.
Thank you so much, Paul, for an excellent statement, and I think you kind of pulled it all together very well. So before I pass the Zoom to our Secretary General for his final comments, I just wanted to thank all of our panelists. I think You've done a wonderful job of really covering the issues faced by election administrators from North, Central, and South here in the Western Hemisphere. And I think what we all take away from this is that democracy is not easy. It can be messy, but at the end of the day, it's the only thing we've got because it gives people an opportunity to have a say in how they're governed. And it's the election administrators who have the unique responsibility of serving as the guarantors of the people having an opportunity to exercise their right to vote, to make sure that they can do it secretly, that their vote will be counted, and at the end of the process, that the results will be respected. And this is where I think we need to focus more attention in the future. This point that Michael Boda made about the increasing role of election authorities as arbiters, because we've got to move away from people rejecting the results if they lose and only accepting them if they win. Win or lose, it's the democratic process. And we all believe in that. We're unified in that. And for that reason, we all join together in celebrating today, Global Election Day. Thank you, ACEEO. Thank you to all of our viewers, and thank you to participants and speakers. Zsolt.
Thank you very much, Richard. After your assessment, I have not much to say. I said at the beginning that we intended to have this event as a celebration and a demonstration to demonstrate our unity, to demonstrate our diversity. And I just had a very quick inventory, let's call it like this, the keywords of these 3 hours. And I think that one of the most important, around 15 words, is like unity, solidarity, transparency, confidentiality, equality, digitalization, education, social media, diversity, next generation, resources, political influence, autonomy. And of course, we can continue the list as well. But these 3 hours definitely showed that we still have so much to do. And I think that in the 90s, when we founded this kind of new regional cooperation, we never thought that in 2022 we still have to emphasize the basic element of the democratic election and the democratization as well. But we have to do it. This is our mission. That's what we accepted, and that's what we decided 30 years ago or 20 years ago, and we need to continue. And many thanks to all of you to joining this event. I do hope that it will be a tradition. The Global Election Day is already a tradition. I do hope that this kind of summit can continue next year. We do our effort to do it. All your suggestions are welcome. My final words, just to thank to Richard and Paul contributing to the organization, also my colleague to János and István for the organization. And the most important is I'm wishing you all a good health, because this is the more important. Nothing about the democracy. The good health is the more important for all of us. And we are absolutely convinced that in this year, any format, anywhere, we can see each other, at least some of you, face to face, not via video conference only. Many thanks again, and have a good night, a good afternoon, have a good morning, and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great.